Welcome to a sparkling new podcast from Mike Parry and Mike Graham. We're the two Mikes.
Actually, it sounds even better when you do it Dullsville, because when you try to be happy and excited and energetic, you sound pathetic.
Thanks.
On digital radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The two Mikes on Talk Sport.
This guy, Glenn, used to be the chairman of United Biscuits.
Yes, he did, yeah.
So what does he know about football?
Well, he knows a lot about custard creams,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
That's not necessarily helpful. Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the two Mikes. We're in for Colin Murray all week. To break or not to break, that is the question. Premier League boss Richard Scudamore says the winter break is getting nearer and nearer, thanks in part to the appointment of Sam Allardyce, who's in favour of players having a rest in the middle of the season. It works in Spain, it works in France, it works in Germany, and it works in Italy. So why can't it work here? And if the last four winners of the Champions League are anything to go by, a winter break is a definite advantage, isn't it? 08717 22 3344. Coming up on the show, we're talking Arsenal's injury woes, the Pep Guardiola diet, and it's Porky Vision as well, the best TV review this side of Philadelphia. You're listening to the two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two Mikes, and I'm delighted to say it's time to say a very, very good morning to a very florid-looking Mr. Mike, Porky Parry. Have you been out in the sun?
I haven't been out in the sun, Mike, but a very good morning to you as
Thank you very
well.
much.
And in fact, I'm delighted to say rain is falling over the capital.
Yes.
So that's
Why are you delighted to say that?
Well, because the heat wave is getting to me, and I do tend to, have to. Bit strangely, really, when there's a sort of heat wave on.
It's a bit strangely,
I
generally.
mean, just get what I've had to put up with over the last 5 days.
Yeah.
A heat wave, right?
Yes.
And I don't like the sun.
But it's not been that hot, really.
It has been very hot.
Much cooler than it was in the middle of last week.
Very hot. I've had 2 bolts put into my jaw, and in place of teeth, which
Right.
I've had to deal with. And that's not easy.
Yes.
I've had.
You've been on a course of anti-inflammatory drugs.
A course of anti-inflammatories, antibiotics.
Yeah.
Anti-pain, because of course you've got to. I was going to say I was.
You haven't got any anti-plank medicine to take, though,
no,
have you?
I'm going to ignore that question. I was going to say that I just grit my teeth and got through the pain.
Yeah.
Didn't have any teeth to grit.
No.
So I just had to get through the pain. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then of course the unfortunate slings and arrows of life,
Yeah.
which we all have to cope with. Plus the heat and all that. Now the rain has come. I'm delighted. The other thing is, it's backbreaking having to go out every 2 days when my housekeeper's not there because she's not always there in the summer to have to water the plants.
Right.
It's really
Hang on, how many plants have you got? I mean, you've got about 10 plants, haven't you? You've got that little tiny roof
30,
garden. Roof
30.
garden, which is about, the size of, no bigger than this studio, really.
My roof garden is...
I have yet to hear the actual dimensions of it.
Well, I can't give the actual dimensions. I've never measured it. I've never taken
but you could
measure out.
hazard a guess. Is it 10 feet by 5? What?
It goes around the corner. It's on 2 sides of
L-shaped.
the property. It's L-shaped, yeah, so it's impossible to say.
Right.
But nevertheless, it is rather backbreaking. But what I do, by the way, is when I wash up, and I wash up 2 or 3 times a day.
Do you?
Yeah, because I like to keep everything sparklingly clean in the kitchen.
This is not very interesting.
No, it is
Why
interesting.
Are you telling me this?
Because I put that then in the watering cans. The watering cans then...
the soapy water?
Yes, I do. Yes.
I don't think that's a good idea.
It's a very good idea.
No.
And do you know why?
No.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because fairy liquid remnants keep the green fly off my fuchsias.
Really?
Yes, that's
I'm
right.
not sure about that.
Yeah, they do.
I don't think that sounds like a very good idea.
No.
They'd probably kill them.
No, they do.
Yeah.
Listen, I'll tell you what I'll talk to you about.
We've got
right?
lots to talk about. We've got to talk about Pep Guardiola's ban on junk food for Manchester City, which is very good.
Isn't that the first sign of trouble at a club when a manager comes and says, first of all, my players are too fat.
Yeah.
That's usually putting your excuses up on the board before anything gets going.
Surely this is the first sign that Pep Guardiola is a modern manager. He wants to see his players fit. He wants to make sure they eat the right things. He wants to see them doing the right things outside of when they're working.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it should be.
Well, I can tell you this. History will show that when a manager comes in, the first thing he does is say, my players are too fat. It usually means that I'm
They're
not sure.
too fat. That's what it usually means.
No, it usually means I'm not sure what I'm doing here, so I think I'll blame the previous manager for not getting the players into
he
shape.
suggested that Samir Nasri, for one, is not looking as lean as he ought to.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something, and a physiological expert will tell you this is the truth.
Yeah.
You can actually get your body into the wrong sort of shape to play football.
Right.
They think that Ross Barkley might have done that. They think that Ross Barkley might have bulked up too much, on his upper body.
Yeah. Too much weightlifting.
Yes, exactly, and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm saying is, if you look at the shape of, for instance, rugby league players, it's an absolute truism that if some rugby league players took off some of the weight they clearly carry around their waist, they would not be as effective as they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're very lean.
Rugby league players.
They're very lean, the rugby league players.
They're not.
Have you not seen rugby league lately? I mean, you were talking about rugby league from about 15 years ago.
No, have you seen...
Now they're like rubber men. They literally bounce off each other.
I tell you what, even rugby union players carry beer bellies. It's obvious, and it's part of their physique.
I have not seen a rugby union player with a beer belly for about 20 years.
It's part of their fighting physique.
No.
It is. It was described to me like that. It's part of the fighting physique of a rugby player.
No, we're now in a world...
Mike Tyndall, who works here, right?
Yeah.
He's never exactly been a Twiggy-type figure on a rugby field, has he?
No, but when he was playing rugby, he was a very, very fit man.
But he carried weight that a footballer wouldn't carry as part of the bulk of the necessity for him to do his job.
Yeah, but it's
his job as a rugby union player.
It's a muscle weight. It's not a fat weight.
Well, what's the difference between a muscle weight and a fat weight? How can you tell that by looking at it?
Well, of course you can.
No,
because
you can't.
Fat means if you can grip fat.
How do you know Nasri's isn't muscle weight?
Because I'm looking at what Pep Guardiola says about him, and he's telling him.
And
I'm telling
you, with my experience of listening to managers over the past 40 years, sounds like he might be getting his excuses in first. The players for being too fat. That's an old chestnut, that is.
OK, now let's talk about a couple of other things as well, which we will get to later in the show. First of all, the winter break scenario. You're not in favour of it. I am in favour of it because I think the only reason you don't want it is because you know that clubs will probably try and go and do all sorts of, sort of mid-season tours, mini tours in China. But if you stop them from doing that and you tell them they can't do that, then I think it's a good thing.
How do you tell the company how to act?
Well, you just tell them that the winter break is however long it is. It's a week or it's 2 weeks or whatever.
Ban them from travelling abroad.
And you say you cannot use this period as a promotional period for your team. You just can't do it.
It's a restriction of labour.
No,
you can't do that.
Well, when Spain,
who would bring in the ban? Who'd bring in the ban?
Well, it would be the Premier League, wouldn't it?
Well, the Premier League would say, by the way, you're not going abroad during the winter break. Like, you can't do that, man.
Why not?
Because they go straight into a court and say, have the Premier League got the right to tell us where we cannot take our players when they're not playing football in England?
Well, they can.
They haven't got the right.
Well, what they can do is they can say, if you take your team away, we will penalise you by 3 points. Why not do that?
That's so ridiculous.
Why?
Because
the whole point of a winter break, right, is for the players to have a rest.
It's not.
To have a break.
It's not.
It is not to make money for the club by doing some promotional tour overseas. Makes perfect sense to me.
Right. To start off with, the Premier League couldn't do anything to discipline them because they are each chairman of a Premier League club is a director of the Premier League, so they'd have to vote 14-6 to penalise the club, and they wouldn't.
I think
you're talking about the Football Association.
I think you could work on that principle. No. You could say, look, certain clubs, obviously, who have the money and the wherewithal to travel to places like Dubai or to go to China might want to do it, but not every club would, and so you might well be able to get a vote on the board and make it work.
I don't think you would, right? But obviously it'd be a
but it's got to be worth considering.
Point.
Sam Allardyce thinks it's a good idea, and you're a great supporter of Sam Allardyce, so you're now already in direct competition with his idea.
Yes, I am. But Sam Allardyce is only saying that because he's the England coach, and the England coach wants the players to be free of injury for all the time that he needs them, and he wants them to be as fresh as they can be for when he needs them. But quite frankly, I think it's a ridiculous idea because you have to play a set number of games every season depending on how many competitions you're in.
Yeah.
So all you're doing with the winter break, which would probably come in January after Christmas and New Year, because traditionally we love games on Boxing Day and New Year's Day and that kind of stuff, right? It would come in January, and then what happens when the bad weather comes in February? Games might be called off.
We never really have terrible weather in this country anyway. It just doesn't really happen.
Do you know what, Mike? Because of health and safety these days, a game is more likely to be called off in February during a
When was the last game that was called off in February?
It was at Middlesbrough when the health and safety people locally said the steps on the way to the ground are too icy for supporters to travel along them. That's the danger in this country.
That can happen at any time, whether there's a winter break or not.
Of course it can, but if you've had a week off in January and then you've got to take 2 weeks off in February because the weather prohibits you playing.
You miss one game.
No, well, it's another game. But what I'm saying is...
It works in Italy, where they have snow. It works in Germany, where they have snow. Yeah. It works in Spain,
18
where they can
18 as opposed to 20.
It doesn't make any difference.
In those leagues. In some of those leagues.
In some of them, it doesn't make any difference. It works perfectly well for them. I don't see why it can't work for the Premier League.
What I'm saying is, when you come back and start again in February, a new round of pre-season training, you've got to get the players up to speed again. It would be disadvantageous in Europe.
No, you say that, but I mean, look at the last 5 winners of the Champions League. Yes. Right? Real Madrid, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Chelsea.
Yes.
Those are the last 5 winners.
One of them's English, Chelsea.
One of them's English,
yes,
1 out of 5.
Right.
It's 2 out of 10 in the last 10 years. The point is that, it does not harm these clubs. They do continue to play all the way through till May and June.
Yeah.
And, in Spain's case, until recently, they were winning everything internationally as well.
Let me tell you this. You're more likely to put your players under pressure and injure them by bringing them back in February and saying, right, those 6 games that we missed in January, you will now be playing...
But it doesn't happen in Spain.
You will now be playing 3 games a week between now and the end of the season to fulfil our fixtures. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if you want that,
there is no
you must
evidence,
subject
though.
those players to the tortuous physical regime that you're blazoning here, then you're mad.
Well, like I say, it works in Spain, it works in Germany, it works in France, it works in Italy.
Does it?
Of course it does. You don't, it's not suddenly, you don't suddenly see all these players falling by the wayside. But I'm fed up listening to your opinions. I want to hear some other opinions as well.
Well, I do.
And I want to hear from you out there in the big wide world.
Would you like me to give the number out?
Yeah, would you like to?
Because you could be accusing me of not knowing the number.
Yeah, go on, give the number out.
Of course I know the number. The number is 08717 22 3344. I'll repeat that, folks.
Yeah.
08717 22 3344. Give us a call, please.
Well done.
And by the way, you must
written it
know
on your wrist?
You must know the sensibility of what I'm saying. Give me a call and agree with me.
This is Talk Sport with the 2 mics. This is the Wix phone-in on Talk Sport, and every day we send a £100 Wix gift card to our best caller, as decided by the exceedingly fair-minded Mr. Mike Porky Parry.
Absolutely.
Yesterday, of course, he gave it to somebody who agreed with him, so today it's almost certain that he won't give it to somebody who agrees with him because he fears
It's an outrageous thing to say.
Fears being accused of gerrymandering the giveaway, right?
Not at all.
So don't forget, the number is this: 08717 22 3344. We're talking about whether or not to have a winter break. Sam Allardyce says he thinks it's a good idea.
Well,
they
he
do
would,
it in
wouldn't he?
Spain, they do it in France, they do it in Germany. We're going to be talking to a German journalist a little bit later on, an expert on how it works there.
We don't do it here.
And we do it in Italy as well, and it works fine. So why not do it in this country?
No, we don't need to.
08717 22 3344. Simon has tweeted at the 2 mics. He says, your average rugby league player is 15 stone and they do not have an ounce of fat. The game is all about speed and power.
Yeah.
So there you
I
go.
know that.
Let's talk to Richard, who's a Man United fan.
Okay.
That kicks things off. Richard, very good morning to you.
Morning, how are you doing,
Yeah,
boys?
very well
thank
indeed,
you.
sir. What would you like to say?
Well, you say about Spain, Germany, etc. You have to remember they have one cup competition. We have 2.
Right,
We
yeah.
have the League Cup and the FA Cup. Spain only have the Copa del Rey. So you're arguing about Real Madrid, Barcelona, that sort of falls down. And because the leagues are so, I wouldn't say weak, but they're not as competitive as the Premier League, they can rest players in the Champions League.
Yeah.
So the Champions League game before, they're playing a lesser team, so they rest their players. And if we honestly think having a week off in January, or 2 weeks off in January, is going to help us in July, I just don't see it. 7 months, it's 6-7 months down the line.
I
it
totally
doesn't
agree with you.
work.
But how can it be detrimental, Richard, is the question, because if so many other countries make it work, and it seems to work very well for them, and, you could argue that our international team, which is why Sam Allardyce wants it, was underperforming in the Euros, was because they were all just burned out.
But then the majority of the players who got to the latter stages of that competition play in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So that argument doesn't work.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, they do. You're absolutely right,
hang on,
Richard.
you say the majority. Let's examine what you just said. How many players in the Portuguese national side play in the Premier League?
Hang on, let's look at France then. Not Portugal.
Portugal won the tournament.
You look at France.
Portugal won the tournament, Richard.
France were a finalist.
But what you're saying is...
So it's not right. So hang on. So it's not a majority.
It's the League Cup.
So it's not a majority then, is it?
It's the League Cup that's killing us. We have to lose the League Cup because you have a week off in January, like Mike Parry said, and then you're going to have to play 3 games every single week to catch up. So they're going to be more burned out than they are now.
Exactly, of course they are.
Listen, I would have no objection to dropping the
so.
League Cup as well, Richard. I don't
No,
think
I
that's
wouldn't
a
drop
bad
the
idea.
League Cup. The League Cup's a great trophy.
Well, you can't have everything.
You don't have to have everything. If you keep it as it is, Rich, I think it'd be absolutely fine. And you know, Richard, as well as I do, the minute the clubs have got a month spare, the shareholders will say, get out to China and earn a couple of million quid. It won't be a rest for the players.
Yeah,
at
but
all.
as I told you,
You can't stop it, Mike.
There is a way of stopping it.
There is not a way of stopping it,
Well,
believe me.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do is when we talk to Ollie Knack, we're going to find out what they do in Germany.
Yeah.
Because I bet you any money that the German teams do not use their winter break to go on some kind of, jamboree across the world.
The German League is nothing like as commercially minded as the Premier League. That's why the Premier League is the best and the richest in the world.
Yeah, but are you saying that Bayern Munich wouldn't want to make money if they could?
Well, I'm telling you that Bayern Munich are one of the richest clubs in the world, and if they decide they don't anymore, that's fine. And for you to point out that, oh, look, German teams have won the Premier League, Spanish teams won the Premier League. The Champions League, yeah.
Well,
but all you pointed out was the three biggest clubs in Europe after Manchester United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to win the Champions League.
Yeah, but it could be that they're having those victories as a result of the fact that...
It's a load of gobbledygook.
It's not a load of gobbledygook. You're just stuck in an old-fashioned 1970s mode.
No, you just got on this trend that you're just grovelling to Sam Allardyce.
No, I'm not grovelling to Sam
Allardyce might be listening and say, hey, that Mike Graham's got the right idea because he thinks like I think.
Yeah, well, it's not a question of me grovelling to people. We know that there's only one groveller in this studio, and it's you. Any chance you get to grovel to anyone, including to young Custis the other day, instead of giving him a hard time on a Saturday night.
Well, I wasn't grovelling to him when I told him to shut his gob on Twitter, was I?
Yeah, but when he was actually here to talk back to you, that was when you grovelled to him. Let's talk to Ryan, who's a Southampton fan. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, lads. How you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed.
Doing well, Brian, thank you.
What would you know? It's not Brian, it's Ryan.
Oh, Ryan, sorry, yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, not Brian. Not Brian, no. It's, it's right. Yeah, no, basically just wanted to say that they're a bunch of overpaid Nancies. It's a joke that they can't get a bit of pride up for their national team and play out of their skin. And it won't make any difference whatsoever, I don't think, because it'll still be in a few years' time, when we're looking back at the tournaments, if we haven't done it, it wouldn't have made any difference. And we just get to have no football over Christmas or over the New Year, which really they should provide us because they get paid far too much money.
Well, you see, this is a bit of an anti-footballing rant, Ryan. And yeah, it's Ryan. And we mustn't do this because these players have a market worth and they're paid their market worth. Now, when you call them Nancies, that's a word which is completely unacceptable on this show, on this family show. We're not going to refer to people like that, Ryan, okay? Or I'll start calling you Brian again. Do you understand me?
It's Ryan.
Yeah, it's Ryan, Brian. Ryan. Anyway, what I was going to say is, Ryan, you've just had a rant now against, and it was a bit predictable. Overpaid footballers
should be made predictable.
Should be made to play 4 times a week and all that. The point of the story is, if you take a month's break in January in this country, it's probably at the wrong time. The players then mentally and physically slow down, and they've got to speed up again. It's detrimental to their efficiency.
Well, definitely it is, and that's what I mean. They should be able to keep going. They should be enjoying their lives, enjoying their jobs, and be thriving all year round, non-stop. They should be buzzing. There should never be a sad face on a footballer. And they should love their job and provide us fans. I'm a season ticket holder. I pay their wages.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I'm moaning about it, but it's Southampton fans, but I'm not moaning about Southampton, by the way. I've got Shane Long up front for me. He runs non-stop till the 89th minute.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Let me ask you a last question, Ryan, before we let you go. Are you glad to see Ronald Koeman being so active up at Everton with his buying and selling policy? He doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Well, the thing is, I'm just wondering, I do wish him well because he's a really good manager and I'm not against any sort of football. I want to see it in all forms. But I hope he's not messing himself up. Southampton was a really good team to step into. They got a really good team ethic. And if he can't instill it in Everton, it might not work for him.
It will work, don't worry, Ryan. I appreciate your advice. Push off now, will you, and go back to supporting a small club like Southampton.
So rude.
Yeah.
Don't be so rude. I mean, it's unbelievable. Maybe the heat has started to get you or something. No. Absolutely incredible. Now, I've got some tweets here.
Great.
Here's one from Matthew. Spot on, Porky. No need for a winter break. Anyway, MG, when does a French team last won the Champions League?
Exactly.
Well, that's an irrelevant question. Sam says this. I've got 1981 on the phone. They want Mike Parry to give their views back. I think it's quite clever, isn't it? And Jim says, when would you schedule the break? Coldest parts of the year change each year.
Exactly.
Could be a disastrous waste of time. See, but it's the principle of it all, right? And Danny says this. It's the principle of having a winter break. It doesn't matter.
What is the principle?
The principle is that the players can take a break from what they do.
But they slow down. They need speeding up.
No, they don't. It doesn't have any deleterious effect on the Spanish clubs, on the German clubs, on the French clubs, or on the Italian clubs, okay?
Yeah, but hang on. You've only named one club in Germany, Bayern Munich, and 2 clubs in Spain.
Yeah.
They're the 3 biggest clubs in Europe after United.
Right.
Do you see my point?
Yeah, I do see
So,
your
of course,
point.
they're going to win the Champions League. They don't win the Champions League because of a month's break in January.
Excuse me, we keep
and
being told...
if that was the case...
We keep being told that the Premier League is the most important, biggest and best, league in the world.
Yes.
So how come in the last 10 years only 2 clubs from this country have actually won it?
Well, that's pretty good. How many clubs from Holland have won it?
No. Nobody's won it from Holland.
How many clubs from
Belgium? Because they haven't
Belgium?
got any money to buy the players.
How many clubs from France?
We've got more money in this league to buy more players from around the world than any other league.
So
so we should be winning it more often than 1 out of 5.
And I would say we know actually how to run football in this country. That's why we've got the most successful league in the world, and we don't have a winter's break, and that is contributing to our success. I've got a very important tweet here I've got to read you.
Yeah, go on, hurry up.
And it's a great one. It says, as much as it pains me to say, Mike Porky Parry is actually right about something for once. Washing up liquid does get rid of greenfly.
Well, I'm glad to know you're an expert in washing up liquid.
Thank you.
First time for everything. This is Talk Sport. We are the two Mikes. We're in for Colin Murray on TalkSport with Wix. Half price on selected tiling and flooring with an extra 15% across the range when you buy online. And the offer ends on August the 2nd. We are, of course, right in the middle of the Wix phone-in as well. There's a £100 Wix voucher up for grabs. Keep calling us, 08717 2233 44. We've got Ollie Knack to talk to as well in a moment. But a lot of people are saying that, you might think you're right about the old washing up liquid scenario.
Yes.
But actually, it's not about putting it in the plant pot itself. It's about putting it on the leaves.
That's what I do.
No, you said you used the water and poured it into the plant.
Yeah, well, what I do is I've got two different heads for my watering cans.
You've got two different faces as well.
I've got two different,
to go with it.
I've got two different heads for my watering cans. I have the direct delivery, which is the funnel.
Yeah.
And I have
you've got a little thing that goes on the top to make
the
it
spray.
like a shower.
The spray, that's right.
Yeah.
And I use the shower one to sprinkle the leaves.
Right.
Because the other thing that happens to leaves in this very hot weather is they burn and frizzle.
It's not very hot. What are you talking about?
It's been very, very hot since last weekend. It has.
No, it's about 22,
It has.
23.
I'm telling you. You could
shouting.
All I'm saying is
Right.
is that. What am I saying?
I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah. I could have fried an egg. I could have fried an egg on the Italian tiles which make up the floor of my roof garden, imported from Italy.
Absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
Gemma says this. I agree with MG. Winter break is exactly what English football needs. Just get rid of the FA Cup replays and tell Parry he's a plank. Thank you, Gemma, for that. Let's talk to Ollie Knack, who is a German football expert, great friend of the show. He's going to tell us how it works in Germany. Ollie, a very good morning to you.
Guten Morgen aus Berlin.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Guten Morgen indeed. Now, tell us how the German winter break works, because Mr. Parry here disagrees with Sam Allardyce, the New England manager, even though he normally agrees with everything that Sam Allardyce says. He basically says that, we should have a winter break because it would be better for English football. I've said it's in Germany, it's in Spain, it's in Italy, it's in France, it works fine. How does it work in Germany?
Well, we start the season late August, and the last game is on 21st of December. I know you have Boxing Day and all that stuff. I think you can still have that. And then our season resumes, or starts, the second half starts at the 21st of January.
So a whole month.
Finished on the it's a whole month, yes. A whole month to recover the likes of Schweinsteigers and all the other old blokes. And it's really necessary. I think it's good. But it is only. I think it should be only the first step, because you have just too many games, as it was mentioned earlier. In England, there are just too many games played. We only have 18 teams in the league. You have 20.
Yeah.
You have the first and second leg in your cup games. You have a strong emphasis on both cups, on the FA Cup and the League Cup.
Yes.
Here in Germany, we don't even play a League Cup. It's more or less a preseason tournament. So altogether, you have like 10 to almost 15 games for your top players, more than we have here in Germany.
Yes.
So there should be a way to reduce the number of games. The winter break is just one thing, but if you have a winter break and still have the same amount of games, it comes up to the same result. Tired players in the summer.
Yeah. The thing is, Ollie, I mean, you're an expert on this and you've got all the facts at your fingertips, quite rightly. If we took a break in January, we would still have to play the same number of games towards the end of the season. So that means that English teams will be playing 3 times in 8 days every week until the end of the season. That not only is not good for players, it's actually actively bad. And it means that the break itself will be nullified by the extreme pressures put on footballers in this country to complete the season on time.
Hang on. You're saying he's got the facts at his fingertips, but you're now spouting nonsense about what you think will happen to players when it doesn't happen to them in Germany, it doesn't happen to them in Spain, and it doesn't happen to them in Italy.
No, I didn't ask you to comment on the proposition I put to Ollie, so if you shut your fat mouth and let Ollie please respond.
You always know when Porky's in the wrong because he starts being abusive. Ollie, tell me, do the players when they come back from...
could Ollie answer my question first, please?
Well, let me ask the question better.
No, Ollie, please just answer that question. Thank you.
What was the question?
3 games per week.
Yes.
3 games per week is definitely too much. I think if you play it over the long season of 40, 45 weeks, 2 games per week is the maximum. I think that's already too much.
Yes.
As I said earlier, you have to reduce the amount of games. It's not about quantity; it's about quality. And it doesn't help to have a winter break and still play the same amount of games.
But which football boss, Ollie, is going to turn down more games? Because a game equals revenue. Revenue equals money in the bank. Go and buy more players.
Right, but you already have enough money from your TV deal. You have around about 3 times as much money as our teams get in the Bundesliga.
Yes, that's true.
So maybe that should be enough, because in the end it doesn't really help just to have the money. A player is still a player, and he needs to get fit, and he needs to stay fit, and maybe that is, I'm sure that is one reason, and I think I've said this earlier because we talked about it a few months ago. I think that's the main reason why English sides are not performing well in Europe. When it comes to crunch time in February or in April and May, those players are just too tired.
Yeah.
And same thing probably goes with your national team.
That's right, because they've come out of, instead of what you guys have done, which is take a month off, they've come out of one of the busiest fixture periods in the entire season. Right. But, I mean, one other question that people are worried about here is that if we had something like this, it would basically mean that the clubs like Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, certainly the bigger clubs, would just go on some kind of promotional tour of China or, the Middle East or America or something like that. Do you have any rules in place to stop German teams from doing that during that month?
No, we don't have any rules, but it's just a question of common sense in a way.
Right.
The clubs know that it is important for the players to recover, so they don't go on a tour. They do about a week or maximum of 10 days of preparation for the season somewhere in Spain or something, but they don't go on large travels in order to make even more money. It is just simply important to have fit players and not just to make as much money as you can.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie, if this is so odious, the system we have in England, why do such great German players as Michael Ballack, as Schweinsteiger, why do they come to this country? It's because they want to play
for the money.
They
come for the money.
No, they want to play in the league because
Rubbish.
it's the best league in the world. Everybody knows it's the most exciting league in the world, Ollie.
It is definitely an exciting league, but come on, it's about the money as well. And you mentioned the 2 old players that came to England. Ballack was, I think, 29, and Schweinsteiger was 31 last year.
Yeah.
So for them, it's a nice end of their career to cash in, and of course,
that's a shocking way to talk about the English Premier League. It's a shocking way. Are you trying to tell me the English Premier League is some kind of retirement home for washed-up German players?
No, I'm not saying that. But of course, it's nice.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah. And I mean, just to go back once again, Ollie, to the problem of injuries and that sort of thing, which Mr. Parry seems to think would happen.
Yeah, which injuries are these?
Well, you're going to claim, you have claimed already, that there would be injuries when players would come back from a winter break.
Yes,
are the players who come back from the winter break in Germany prone to more injuries than those who are not?
No, I don't get the point. Why should they be prone to injuries after a winter break?
Well, I agree, it's a stupid point, but I wasn't the one making it. It was Porky.
No, because they have to go through another pre-season training ritual. Don't. Yes, they do. Because, I mean, look, a player who doesn't play for a month is a half-fit player. Because we all know what match fitness means, Ollie. You've got very good English. You know what match fitness means. Players can't be match fit if they've been kicking their heels for a month. So it's a negative and in my view, pointless exercise to have a footballer who is built to run around all day long, every day, training and playing. To have him idle is ridiculous.
No, I think match fit is I know what you're talking about, yes. And of course players always say, "I'd like to play. I just want to be on the pitch and I want to play. I don't want to practice." But at some point in your not in your career, but during the season, you have to recover because you just can't simply play every other day or every third day. And those 4 or 5 weeks that we have a break. They don't practice hard every day. They get usually they get at least 10 days off completely, where they relax a little bit. Where of course they meet the physio and all that kind of stuff. But then around about 2.5 weeks before the season resumes or continues, they go back into practice and build up their form. I mean, it's in a way a cycle. And
I think relaxation is for wimps, relaxation.
That's because you're frightened of relaxing.
No such word in my lexicon.
Yeah, you're frightened of relaxing just in case you lose something and something happens and somebody takes your job. One final question to you, Ollie. You've probably read this morning about Per Mertesacker, who's going to be out for some months, according to Arsene Wenger. He's saying now that he needs to get an experienced defender into Arsenal for the start of the season. Anybody likely to come from Germany, do you think?
I haven't really looked into that matter yet. Hard to say whether any team in Germany they are preparing for the season are really willing to give away a player at this point of the preparation. So it's hard to say right now, actually.
Okay.
If you have enough money, you will find one.
Oh yeah, we'll find
will.
some washed-up German player who'll be happy to come and play for Arsenal for a few months.
Yeah,
I'm
like
sure.
Schweinsteiger, but he still gets into the German team, doesn't he, Ollie? You know, you say you're accusing him of being washed up, but he was still in the German team, wasn't he, in the championships?
Excuse me, I didn't get that.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I'm saying that you said Schweinsteiger was washed up and came to the Premier League at 31, but you still played him in your national German team, didn't you? Does that mean all German players are washed up?
Well, he didn't play the whole tournament.
No, he didn't. He came on as a super
He
sub.
arrived not fit. He arrived not fit at the German team because of his age and because of the Premier League. Well, he didn't really play that much.
You've got an excuse for everything, you have.
Ollie, listen, I'm terribly sorry. I must apologise on behalf
Ollie.
of my very rude co-host here.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, as ever, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Don't call us next time, mate. We'll call you, OK? Thank you. Thank you.
You're absolutely the most rude person I've ever encountered. You're disgraceful. How about this from Stuart in Scunthorpe? Mr. Parry, you should never water the leaves of a plant in hot, sunny weather, as the water droplets that remain on the leaves act like little magnifying glasses and focus the sunlight and hence actually burn the leaves. Always water the base of the plant, as the vast majority of water taken in by plants goes via the root system.
Well,
so you got that wrong as well.
No, I know all that.
Well, no, you just told me you watered the leaves.
But when do I water them?
You didn't tell me when you watered them, but you told me that you watered them.
I water them before dawn, right, before the sun's come up, or I water them at dusk.
What time does the sun come up?
In my...
well, you live on a different planet. What do you mean, in your part of the world?
This morning, it came up at 4:45, and at 4:25, I was out in the roof garden with the watering cans, doing the very operation.
Why are you up at that time?
Because I have an obligation to... Plants need looking after as well as people.
Well, I suppose you've got an obligation to something. So you've got an obligation to plants.
Well, of course you have. If you have plants, you have to water them.
Most people have a family. Most people have a family.
Yeah, well, I've got family as well.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, who are they?
Well, what's that got to do with you? What do you think our millions of listeners want to hear about my, lineology or linealogy or of my family? They don't. They don't. They just want to hear about... No. See, that's you again, isn't it? Getting off the subject, because Ollie and I between us have battered you to the ground.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone who heard that conversation would have thought that Ollie agreed with anything you said. But anyway, we'll take more of your calls coming up next. 08717 22 3344. This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics, of course. We've got loads of calls to take. 08717 22 3344. Wardy says, on the advice of the learned Mike Parry, I'm off to wash me roses in the kitchen sink.
Yes, that's right.
How about this from T in Kent?
Yeah.
How rude was Mike Parry to that German guest? Can't handle when he's speaking to someone with more football knowledge.
No.
One of these people who continuously keeps saying the Premier League is the best league in the world.
Well,
it is the richest league and the most competitive league. However, it is not the best.
Yeah.
Simple fact, when was the last English team to win a European competition? If Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Juventus and Bayern Munich were in the Premier League, they would occupy the top 5 of 7 places at the end of the season.
Oh, that's all totally hypothetical. Listen, before we move on, by the way, I want to ask you about your student days later on in the show, because you won't believe what I've found out.
What's that?
I found out that that students these days, instead of asking for more social areas in this student accommodation, which is now a huge industry, do you know what they've been doing?
What?
They've been asking for more study areas.
What?
And to close down the bars in the halls of residence.
Really?
I'm not joking.
They've gone mad.
They must have gone mad. I mean, this is about... young people are continually letting me down these days. Continually letting me down. They drink less than we used to when we were their age. Yeah. They study more than we did when we were their age.
Much less reckless.
They're much less reckless.
More careful.
Much more careful.
That's shocking.
They lead clean and sensible
lives.
In many ways. I think it's an absolute disgrace. It's all backed up by fact. You know, these people who are building these student accommodation blocks, and they're burgeoning all over the country as universities get bigger, have been told we've had to redraw the plans. Right. Students don't want drinking areas anymore. Really? I'm outraged.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Let's go back to the phones, because we are, of course, in the Wix phone-in. We send a £100 Wix gift card to the best caller every day, as decided by you, Mr. Mike Porky Parry. Roger's an Arsenal fan. Roger, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Mike.
Yeah, hi, Rog.
What would you like to say, Rog?
Basically, I think listening in, and I think, I'm all against having a winter break.
Good.
Because I think... what would be the actual point of it? Who would it actually benefit?
Well, I think it would benefit, as we were talking to Ollie Knack there, even though Porky thinks that Ollie agreed with him, when he said that in that crucial time in the Champions League, and I think Arsenal suffered from this because they always have a bad February, they would benefit from it in the sense that the players would be more rested.
We always have a bad November, so it's like, We have a bad number notoriously, right? It's just become very apparent now. You know, let's look at February this year.
Yeah.
You know, we've beaten Leicester 2-1 at home. You know, would that put us 2 points behind them? Now, what would be the sense of having that? I mean, a break wouldn't have made any difference at the end of February, would it? Because we didn't win when it mattered.
Well, no, but the point is, but Roger, what it would do is that when you come back to the knockout stages of the Champions League in February, then suddenly the players would be a little bit more rested instead of having just worn themselves out over the Christmas period with fixture after fixture.
Yes, but then you've got to take into you. Then the flip side of that would be if you have a winter break and then you come back in, then you're playing, like you said, you play 3 games a week. Yeah. Then that will put the actual physical burden back on the players.
Of course it will. Of course it will. And Roger, you're absolutely right. Roger, imagine a player not playing for a month. I mean, most footballers, after the season started, dread being laid off for a month, right? So why would you introduce a system where you lay them off for a month? The muscles start, getting flabby.
It doesn't happen in those countries where
the cardiothoracic lung capacity goes down.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, of course it does. But then what you've got to take into account...
Well, hang on. What are you agreeing with him for, Roger? Roger, hang on a sec. Don't agree with him because you'll just encourage him.
I'm not agreeing with him at all. I think you've got to think after the winter break, you're going to start playing 3 games a week. I mean, of course then the financial burden is going to be put back on fans. I mean, you've got to take into account. You've got to take into account there are a lot of fans out there that have young kids.
The fans are the most important part of football, Roger, and you're a fan. I'm on your side.
But I'm not going to be able to afford to go to 3 games a week.
Exactly.
Yeah, and especially.
But you're assuming, Roger, there would be 3 games a week. There wouldn't have to be 3 games a week.
Well, when else are you going to play him?
Well, you just either start the season slightly earlier. Hang on.
Yeah, but how else are you going to fit those games in?
Well, because you start the season. If you say you take a 2-week break, right? You start the season a week earlier, and you finish a week later.
So now you want to rub out the summer holiday for the players?
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Look,
not at all.
Of course it would. That would have to be happened. The only way for a winter break to be feasible would be to have the League Cup done out of the way by Christmas.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Well, I don't think anyone would miss the League Cup, do you?
I don't think anybody would miss the League Cup. But then again, why don't scrap Premier League involvement in the League Cup to accommodate a winter break?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking this way. Let's take into account you have the Champions League, you have the League Cup, and you have league games all before Christmas.
You've got to keep the league. You've got to keep the League Cup, Rog, because that's a trophy. That's a trophy that all bar 3 or 4 clubs can actually win.
It's a waste of time.
Now, let me tell you, everybody.
Roger, thanks for your call.
Yeah, Rog, thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm on your side, mate. You're a fan. I'm a fan. He's not. Now then, remember, please, we are the 2 mics. We're in for Colin Murray.
So insincere.
We are the 2 mics. I'm sorry about the interruption. We are the 2 mics. We're in for Colin Murray. We're on Talk Sport, and we're with Wix. And the Karcher K4 pressure washer, you can save £50 on that. It used to be £189.99. It is now an amazing £139.99.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
This is Talk Sport.
On digital radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The 2 mics on Talk Sport.
Yeah, but at 19 with the Vauxhall Viva, I was a babe magnet.
Really? Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the 2 mics. We're in for Colin Murray all week. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Arsenal. We're going to be joined by Stuart Robson. He's going to tell us what he makes of their inactivity in the transfer window. We might even talk a bit about Everton's inactivity in the transfer window while we're at it. We'll have some more tips on watering plants. Keep your ideas coming in. Porky seems to think putting fairy liquid on them is a great idea.
It is.
I don't. 08717 22 3344. Porky Vision coming up a little bit later on as well. The best TV review this side of Philadelphia. You're listening to the 2 mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. Now, I've got a couple of tweets here for you. One from, Paul, who says, Porky's lack of bladderation is clearly showing with his rudeness. Shove a bottle of Pinot down his throat, sharpish. And green shirt says the same.
That doesn't solve anything.
Porky's very irascible today, in urgent need of bladderation. And then Matthew says, Porky is on one today. Are you sure he's been watering his plants with fairy liquid and not drinking it?
Yeah, no, of course I haven't been drinking fairy liquid. You put it on your plants, it's well known. Ask any horticulturist, he'll tell you that's exactly what it's all about, OK?
Yeah. Now, I've got one here here from someone asking what the bars were like at Trent Poly, where you attended your School of Further Education.
If you mean the University of the Trent.
No, I mean Trent Poly.
The University of the Trent didn't actually have bars in itself. It didn't have a campus. You see what I mean? But
well, because it was a polytechnic.
No.
It was just a sort of prefab building, was it?
No, it was because it was a city centre campus, so to speak. So it wasn't spread out like sort of the University of Nottingham, which was out of town on a much bigger field type thing. You know what I mean? Well, it's more rural.
Yeah.
Now, the point is, though, we still had some of the greatest bars in England at our disposal. One of them was Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem.
One of the greatest bars in England.
It is.
You sure you're not over-egging the pudding here?
Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem was where Richard the Lionhearts set off for his third crusade.
Really?
And you know what? It's not...
With a pint of mead?
Maybe, yeah. It's not even a building. Do you know what it is? It's a hole hollowed in the wall of Nottingham Castle.
Is it?
That's what it is.
Okay.
And it's only a small bar, but it is called Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem.
Yeah, I think I've been in there, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Many moons ago. I went to a wedding
brilliant.
up there, I think, a long time ago.
There's one called the Salvation, which is another great pub in Nottingham. One called the Blue Bell, I think it's called.
So
on
is this where you spend most of your time? I mean, the difference
all my time.
The difference between the youth of today and the students. I mean, I don't quite understand this story saying they're not drinking as much, because all we hear is that this 24-hour binge drinking culture that we now live in means that people are drinking constantly.
Yes.
And the idea that these students are suddenly not, and instead of deciding they want to have sort of study areas, is bizarre.
Well, what I think they're missing out on, you see, this is what concerns me, is that those student years are years in which you can actually explore alternative ways of life, and then you find out after 3 years...
to meet like-minded people.
Sure.
Debate, interesting philosophical ideas about life and the world and all the rest of it.
Of course you are. And then you find out...
I see you doing that somehow.
And then you find out after 3 years that it's actually not a great life, but it is good for a temporary...
Or in your case,
revision.
after 1 year, right?
Well, how many years did you do it for?
I did 2.
You did 2 years, and then you copped out.
I didn't cop out, no. I decided that I wanted to be a journalist, and there wasn't any point in getting a degree in order to become one, because in those days you didn't need a degree to get a job in a newspaper. So I decided, now that I know what I want to do, I'm going to go off and do it.
But I came to exactly the same conclusion, but it only took me 1 year to come to that conclusion. It took you 2.
That's right.
I think that's the difference between you and I.
Between you and I,
I'm a man of decision.
Because in my second year at university, I actually edited the student newspaper, which was fantastic preparation for the rest of my career.
What's that got to do with anything?
Well, did you have a student newspaper at Trent Poly?
No, I didn't need to.
Did they have one?
Sorry?
Did they have one?
I've no idea.
You don't know?
No.
Why not?
Because that wasn't in my remit to go and be a pretend journalist. What I did was I left after 1 year, became a real journalist. You know, as the youngest ever sort of class reporter on the Chester Chronicle.
Were you?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
The youngest ever?
Class
What,
reporter.
were you like a child prodigy?
No, that sort of thing, yeah. Anyway, listen, I'll tell you what I'll talk to you about. I'll talk to you about much more important issues,
hang on, I
okay?
haven't finished talking about this yet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because what I was going to say to you, the difference then, of
on.
course, was that we were given grants to go to university, right? So not only was all our tuition paid, but basically they also then gave you money to spend as well.
Well,
on books.
Well, let me tell you.
How much did you spend on books?
I didn't spend anything on books. in fact, I bought one book, and it was a set of tables, valuation tables.
Yeah, because you were studying to be like a chartered surveyor.
That's right, absolutely. My father was like selling property at the time. He used to go onto a building site.
What do you mean at the time?
Well, at the time I went to the University of the Trent.
What did he do the rest of the time?
Well, no, I'm just saying that. Well,
did he have like 5 different jobs?
Yes, he did.
Five
actually,
different careers.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
really.
Been a salesman all his
sort
life.
of Willy Loman type.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he used to sell bog brushes for Addis, right? Yeah. And then he moved on to other things, and one of them was selling houses.
Salesman.
He was a travelling salesman. Yeah, he was. I mean, in post-war Britain, there weren't many jobs around, so he literally, got a Morris Minor. And,
what about the white heat of the technological revolution?
Well, that sort of passed him by, as it's passed me by, sort of me. But no, and
he was a war hero, though, right?
Oh, my father was a war hero, yeah.
Nobody wanted to employ a war hero?
Well, there were lots of war heroes coming back after the Second World War. I mean, he was 17 when he joined the Royal Navy in 1940. Well, a lot of them had done more, actually.
Really?
I mean, Spitfire pilots always got top jobs. In fact, funny enough, one of my editors later on in the Chester Chronicle was a Spitfire pilot.
Was he?
His name was Robert something, but he was... I'm afraid that the war had affected him a bit. He was I think he was shell-shocked, really, by the war, but he was a very brave man. Yeah, but a very brave man.
Good that he's left an indelible mark on your life, though.
I'll tell you when I first discovered it, I thought there was something a bit odd about him. On January the 23rd, he came round...
he thought that about you?
I'm not sure, but on January the 23rd, he came round the newsroom, shaking hands with everybody and saying, and a Happy New Year, Happy New Year.
January the 23rd?
January the 23rd, yeah. And he'd been there since, like, January the 2nd, after the
New
Year.
Very odd.
Yeah, but anyway, that was post-war Britain, I suppose.
I suppose it was. All right, and so what do you want to tell me about then?
Well, what about what Arsenal are going to do with Per Mertesacker?
Per Mertesacker. Well, we're going to talk to Stuart Robson about that.
Being knackered. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk to Stuart Robson about that in a minute.
Yes, we are indeed. Yeah,
I mean, he'll know more about that.
He does know more about it than we do.
But, I mean, we don't know how long he's going to be out for. He could be out for months.
Well, he could be out for months. Now, listen, the other issues which we've got to start looking at are the call from Mr. Glenn to say to top footballers like Rio Ferdinand, Paul Scholes, maybe Alan Shearer's included.
Gary Neville,
Alan Hansen, of course, who's now retired. But Mr. Glenn's view is, stop talking, get off the sofa.
Martin Glenn from the FA, who doesn't, who admits that he's not an expert in football.
Exactly, he's a chief executive, and his plea is, look, get off the sofa and come and join, the football world.
Well, what has though?
Well, as to bring your experience to the coaching side.
Right.
Now, I'm sorry, but this is so nonsensical.
Well, how many coaches does he want?
Well, not only how many coaches does he want, but does not Mr. Glenn appreciate that just looking at a player and saying, there's Rio Ferdinand, I think he won 7 Premier League titles with Manchester United, he won however many caps, 80-odd for England, all that. He'll make a fantastic coach for England. Yeah. That's not the case. Bobby Charlton...
Also, he might not want to do it, apart from anything else.
Well, this is exactly what I'm saying. Bobby Charlton had no intuition to be a coach. It never worked out for him. Neither did Jeff Hurst. Right. And Jeff Hurst has a unique role in football in the world. He's the only one who's ever scored a hat-trick in a World Cup final. Yes. And yet when Jeff Hurst went into the early form management after retiring, it didn't suit him. It didn't
happen so much in those days either, did it? I mean, also the world of punditry was not what it is now. I mean, you can now go onto one of many TV stations around the world and make an absolute fortune doing it.
Mike, in those days, Fred Pickering played centre forward for Everton in the 60s, right? And his career burnt out very quickly. He was a star for about 2 or 3 years. He did play for England, but he never quite made it to the 1970 squad.
Right.
Now, when I last heard about it, because you keep in touch with old Everton players as they're my club, Fred Pickering spent the greater part of his working life as a warehouse foreman.
Yeah.
Because when you left football in those days, you weren't regarded...
If you hadn't bought a pub, that
exactly.
was about, you had to do something.
Exactly. And the only way to stay in football was to be a coach or a manager like Howard Kendall, like going way back, like Bill Shankly.
Well, what about Ray Wilson from the 1966 World Cup winning team?
Well, do you know the Ray Wilson situation is so odd? Because I was working for the Daily Express then in Manchester, right? So that was a good, 66 to sort of... what would that have been? 76, about 15 years later. Right. So, about 81, 82.
For God's sake.
No.
Seen the time.
No. You'd turn up in, where did he go back to? He went back to Yorkshire, right? And somebody told me that their old fella had died, right? And I said, that's very sad. Some story I was on. He said, we won't believe what happened. I said, what? He said, well, I rang up the local undertakers. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what you do when your father dies, yeah. He says, and they turned up. He said, guess who it was? I said, well, the Undertaker. Right. He said, no, it was Ray Wilson.
Really?
I said, what? He said, yeah.
I mean, you've got to do something.
I said, hang on, Ray Wilson played left back for England in 1960s World Cup. He said, yeah. He said, but his family's always had an undertaking firm round here. Somewhere like Bradford or somewhere in Yorkshire.
Okay.
And I said, and he actually turned up. He said, yeah, he turned up. Ray Wilson saw me old fella off. He says, I was well pleased,
Yeah, well, I suppose, celebrity undertaking business.
Yeah, exactly.
What can you do? Yeah, but I mean, whereas now, the amount of money that is on offer, as I say, either as a coach or I mean, the whole Gary Neville situation, of course, is that he's now stuck in limbo because he can't really be a coach now because his coaching career has kind of come to a rather grisly end and not a very successful one. And he can't go back on TV because he can't now advise anybody else on how to be a decent coach.
Don't you think the general viewing public, because he was so good at what he did, will actually welcome him back?
No.
I
think he is, as I said at the time, by going down to Valencia and failing, he's sort of inevitably damaged his credibility.
Well, what about Alan Shearer?
What about Alan Shearer?
Well, he spent like 5 weeks at Newcastle. That failed. They went down. He's back in the studio.
Yeah, but he didn't do it.
And I think he's very good at what he does.
Yeah, but I mean, he went to Newcastle when they were already down. Really, I mean, as much as
he could have saved them.
Well, he could have done, but I mean, it wasn't quite the same situation. Yeah. Gary Neville, don't forget, having failed in Valencia, came back to then coach England's defence. And against Iceland, he was supposed to be the guy in charge.
What I think is a strange situation. Sam Allardyce is a professional manager.
Yeah.
Davy Moore is a professional manager.
Yes.
The difficulty with some of the guys who start off in the media is you think they're playing at being like a manager and a coach and then dip back into the studio.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong for Roy Keane to be assistant manager for Ireland and also a football pundit, but I would prefer to see them as one or the other.
Yeah.
Because when it's mixed like that, there's obviously going to be situations in which their views are going to be, I don't know...
Tainted.
not tainted, but I mean influenced by the
players
I think that's one of the reasons
they control.
Why
Mr. Glenn, as you refer to him, wants these guys, but could well be back in the coaching role, so that when they do go back on television, they're not going to be critical of England. I suspect. But anyway, we'll be talking to Stuart Robson about some of that, and also some of what is going on at Arsenal, because Per Mertesacker is out for weeks, possibly months. They need to get a new defender in. He's going to tell us why. Nothing seems to be happening at Arsenal. This is TalkSport. We are the two mics in for Colin Murray on TalkSport with Wix. Half price on selected tiling and flooring with an extra 15% across the range when you buy online. The offer ends on the 2nd of August. Now, coming up a little bit later on in the show, we've got Porky Vision, so we'll be finding out what Mr. Parry's been watching on TV and what you should be watching as well. Right now, though, there's a lot of Arsenal stories around this morning.
There certainly are.
Some related directly to Arsenal, obviously with Per Mertesacker's injury, and it may keep him out for as many as 4 or 5 months, we've been told, that Arsene Wenger's not sure about. And as you know, Mike, with every injury that Arsenal get, it always seems to take longer for them to get back. So now they're saying they need to get a defender in, but nobody knows who they're going to get. Stuart Robson is a man who knows an awful lot about what goes on inside the beltway, as we like, in terms of Arsenal. Stuart, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, morning, Stu.
So, I mean, it's bad news,
morning.
I suppose. I mean, there are some people in the office here who say, actually, well, Per Mertesacker is not exactly one of the quickest or best defenders that Arsenal have ever had. This might actually be good for Arsenal in a way, in the sense that they'll have to bring somebody else in who might turn out to be a better bet.
Well, they've already brought in Rob Holding, the young boy from Bolton, and he might get a start because Gabriel's got an illness at the moment. Koscielny got injured in the last game of the European Championships. No Per Mertesacker, so the under-21 pairing of Callum Chambers and Rob Holding, they may just get a start right at the beginning of the season. Right. I'm not saying it's the best combination, but they could be thrust into the limelight fairly quickly.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of put the onus, I suppose, if you like, on the recovery time that some players at Arsenal seem to take longer than everybody else to get back to full fitness.
Absolutely right. Did you say something like 4 to 5 months of Per Mertesacker?
Well, I mean,
might as well make that a year then, mightn't we?
Well, exactly, because almost every sort of Arsene Wenger estimate of when someone's coming back is wrong by at least sort of 50% more.
Well, it was interesting that I was reading what Ivan Gazidis was saying when he was in America about how the game has changed and how you need to have your medical staff doing top quality. You need the player identification to be top quality. You need your sports science to be top quality. Well, he's talking a very good game, but at the moment you can't see that happening at Arsenal because their sports science department and their medical department seem as though they're very, very poorly run.
Yeah, they do. Now, Stu, I need to understand a bit more, please, about the internal politics of Arsenal. Everton have just got a new owner, so Mr Mashiri, who's up at Everton, has now triggered this £100 million fund that the new manager, Mr Koeman, is going to hopefully exercise in the transfer market. Who is the person at Arsenal, amongst all the billionaires who own shares in the club, who go to Arsene Wenger and say, right, come on, we're releasing £250 million, Arsene, get on with it. How does it work?
Well, it's meant to be Ivan Gazidis. He's the man that's in charge of the purse strings. He's the man in between the owners and Arsene Wenger. But it seems as though Arsene Wenger runs the football club. There's no question about that. He dictates exactly how much money he wants to spend. He dictates exactly which players he wants to bring in. And I'm not sure they're always the best players. He's got a chief scout in Steve Rowley who he trusts immensely. But at the moment, that doesn't seem to be working properly because the players they're sometimes targeting aren't of the highest quality. And when they do target them, they don't offer enough money for them. So they're never going to get those players.
And I mean, looking at the back pages this morning as well, Stuart, Gonzalo Higuain has now become the biggest, most expensive transfer in the history of Italian football. He's gone from Napoli to Juventus, which people think might mean that Pogba's going to come here, maybe to Manchester United, but we shall see. But Higuain was a target for Arsenal a few seasons ago. There was talk he might be a target this season, but again, another great striker goes missing from Arsenal's list.
It was maybe even 2 or 3 years ago. There was rumours that Arsenal were interested in Higuain. And when he first went to Napoli, he didn't play particularly well. But if anybody saw him last year, he was probably the best striker in Europe. He was absolutely outstanding. And Arsenal didn't want to pay enough money for him 2 or 3 years ago. They could have I think if Higuain was playing for Arsenal last season, they'd have won the title. There's no question about that. He was absolutely superb for Napoli. He scored goal after goal. He scored goals out of nothing. He looked as though he was a yard quicker. Whatever he'd done in the pre-season the year before worked for him, and he's now going to go and do it for Juventus. He'll probably score 30 goals for Juventus as well.
He probably will. And so, I mean, who's left out there? Because, I mean, lots of people, I think, including Thierry Henry, have said that, if all they've got is Giroud up front, they're not going to win anything. So, I mean, who are they going to go for between now and the window closing?
Well, there's talk about Lacazette. They've offered quite a bit of money for him, but I'm not sure he's the answer anyway. I've seen a lot of Lacazette. Yes, he will score goals, but he can be lazy, can be temperamental at times. He doesn't always look as though he's working as hard as he should do, but he has scored goals in recent time. And there's another player they're looking at in France, Ben Yedder, who's scored a lot of goals for Toulouse. But I'm not sure they're the highest quality. They're not going to make Arsenal championship winners. I think that's the problem. Arsene Wenger's always looking for a bargain somewhere. He's bought two big players, and I think they've both in some ways worked for him. Ozil took a little while to work for him the first year, but now have become a good player for him. And Alexis Sanchez had a good first couple of years. He needs those to carry on playing, and he needs a high-quality centre-forward to play right at the front. He's got a good midfield player. That's one thing that Arsenal have got at the moment in Xhaka. I think he's going to be an excellent player for Arsenal. He's going to be the holding player who's not only a good tackler but also good on the ball, and that's what he's been looking for. So you have to give him a little bit of credit for that one.
Indeed. Now, Stu, Arsenal had the best opportunity to win the Premier League last season for a decade because Leicester eventually won it, so it meant it was up for grabs. No disrespect to Leicester, they did a brilliant job, but all the other so-called Big Four fell by the wayside. This can't go on forever. How do you see this resolving itself? Arsenal not grabbing opportunities even when they're smacking them in the face.
Well, there's one big reason. It's the manager.
Yeah, I know, but everybody keeps saying that. But something's got to break, hasn't it? There's a 60,000-seater stadium there. There's 60,000 fans. The pressure from 60,000 fans is going to increase every week that Arsenal are not on the top of the Premier League next season.
You're absolutely right. If I was the chairman of the board, I'd have been looking at bringing Guardiola in. I'd have been looking at bringing Mourinho in. I'd have certainly been looking at bringing Antonio Conte in because Antonio Conte, when he was at Juventus, was the best coach in European football. And I saw that again at the European Championships when they played against me. If any of those three managers came in and managed Arsenal last season or this season, they would win the title. Under Arsene Wenger, they won't win the title this year again.
I'm afraid that's what people are going to be used to. And I mean, but the time will come, presumably, when someone above Arsene Wenger will say,
but there's nobody above. That's the problem.
The problem is that he's in charge of the whole place, really. Yeah. And he's the only one that can sack himself.
Yeah, the thing is, Stu, the only thing that could work is a fans' revolt. But the problem is, fans' memories dim over the summer and they think, oh, well, we'll have a better season next season. They suddenly renew their season ticket. And the problem is that when you're a season ticket holder, you can't actually make a protest by saying, we're not going to go this week because you've already paid for your seat.
Well, they tried that last season anyway, didn't they?
And the other problem that Arsenal have, or Arsenal supporters, I know lots of Arsenal supporters that don't want Arsene Wenger at the football club anymore, but as soon as they voice their opinion, they get shouted down by other people. There's even fights in the stands between the Arsenal supporters, particularly at away games.
It's amazing, isn't it?
People criticise Arsene Wenger.
Yeah. It's amazing.
He's built an empire where he doesn't want to be criticised or can't be criticised because everybody goes against it.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, Stu, just before I let you go, I've got an on-footballing question for you. We've been having a debate here on the radio this morning about watering plants. I don't know if you're a keen gardener. Porky claims that the best thing to do with plants is to water them with fairy liquid. Where do you stand?
Absolutely not. I've tried it once before and it didn't really work. It frothed up at the wrong time. I'm a very much, you've got to water them first thing in the morning and last thing at night. And you must make sure if you've got the right sort of plants, you've got to water them very, very heavily in both those times. Fairy liquid doesn't work. Whole load of rubbish.
Yeah, quite right,
I didn't know you had green fingers, Stu. I know you had two left feet, but I didn't know you had green fingers.
Don't worry about that. I've got box hedging. It's all nice and neat and the little... Oh, magnificent.
Tremendous.
I love it. What
a fantastic answer to the question.
Exactly.
Stuart Robson, thank you very much indeed. So once again, Porky, proved incorrect by a professional who knows what he's talking about. This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Porky Vision coming up a little bit later on. We've got listography tomorrow and then, of course, the Porky Quiz coming up on Friday to help commemorate the 50th anniversary of the England World Cup victory in 1966.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I hope you'll be boning up on your history of year.
Well, I won't need to because I've grown up with it. I was there when it happened, right, although very young, obviously. But I think when you're taking information at that age and it's of such a monumental importance to your being as a kid, remember as a schoolboy, I was watching England win the World Cup,
Yeah.
stays with you forever.
Does it? Well, we'll see how well you do. I'll predict 3 out of 10.
Yep.
As per usual, but obviously the independent quizmasters are setting the stall out even as we speak.
Yeah, are they? Where are they?
Well, I can't tell you where they are.
No.
I can't possibly give you any information about the independent quizmasters.
Do you feel on reflection that you made an ass of yourself? An ass, I said. An ass of yourself in the quiz last week.
No.
By asking me the question, where is the next Formula 1 Grand Prix? And the quiz, of course, was on the Friday.
Yeah.
And I said Hungary, because the Hungarian race was on Sunday.
Hungarian.
But you wouldn't give me a point because you
that
said...
wasn't the answer I had in front of me.
You said it's the wrong answer.
The answer in front of me was Germany.
Yeah, but Germany was a week on Sunday.
Well, it was
so
the
it
next
wasn't.
Grand Prix. I
No, it
don't
wasn't
know
the
why
next
you're
one.
going over this.
Well, it wasn't the next one.
Well, it wasn't. As
It
far
wasn't
as the
the next
masters,
one.
I don't know why you're going over this.
The next one was Hungary.
I don't know why you're going over it.
You're cheating.
Just get over it.
See?
Just move on.
I don't like the fatness of your face when you cheat like that and look me in the eye. Yeah.
Really? I should look at you in the eye. I don't like looking in the eye. By the way, have you seen the story about the tree?
Oh, this
the
is
Shawshank
magnificent.
Redemption
now,
tree.
This is magnificent.
Well, it's not magnificent. It's terribly sad.
No,
it's
but
actually tragic.
It's magnificent to see how the things that can influence people's lives.
Yeah.
The true story is, the real story here is that what happened was the tree is in Ohio. Just to fill everybody in, you've seen the Shawshank Redemption.
Of course.
Explain the closing scenes to me,
Not
please.
only have I seen it, but basically, you know, whenever it's on, I always watch it. I mean, it's
I
actually
can't
on
watch
Netflix.
it. I think it's too
Have you
cruel.
actually seen it as well?
I've seen it all the way through.
Because you've only seen one film that I know of all the way through.
Yeah, no, it's
not
too,
Top Gun, your favourite.
It's too cruel for me. The
Why?
Shawshank Redemption.
But it's got a very happy ending.
No, it hasn't got a happy ending.
What's the ending? Then? You tell me. What's the final scene?
The ending is that the doctor, who didn't actually murder his wife, right. Got out of jail eventually, and he'd been scooping a hole through the wall for 20 years with a spoon.
Yeah.
Eventually gets out, and he gets away. And
was it with a rock hammer?
Yeah, that's right. No, it was a spoon. It was a spoon.
Well, what was the rock hammer for?
I don't know, but he borrowed a spoon.
No, it was
remember,
a rock
in the early
hammer.
part of the film, he borrowed a spoon.
No, it was a rock hammer.
It wasn't a rock hammer. Why would they give a prisoner in jail a rock hammer?
Well, he got one through the various nefarious means that they bring things in with.
Anyway, he eventually gets away, and then Samuel L. Jackson. Was that? No, who's the other guy? Who's the older guy?
It's not Samuel L. Jackson.
What's his name?
You're talking about the guy who is narrating it.
Yeah, no, the brilliant actor. Yeah,
the brilliant actor.
Yeah,
Morgan.
Come on. Morgan's his first name. Morgan's his first name.
It is.
Right, that's right. Anyway, he
Morgan what?
Morgan. I was going to say Snipes then, but that's Wesley, isn't it?
That's Wesley Snipes.
Anyway, so Morgan Flickcroft, or whatever, what's his name?
Morgan Flickcroft.
What's his name?
It's Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, that's him, yeah. So he eventually gets out after serving his sentence.
Morgan Flickcroft.
Yeah, he gets out. Shut up. He gets out after serving his sentence, and a secret rendezvous is made with the guy who's escaped, who's become his buddy in jail.
Yes.
And he goes to this field, and he picks a letter up from under a tree, where the secret code has told him to get it, to lead him, eventually, to his friend.
But he finds money in there, doesn't he?
Bit of money as well. Yeah, that's right.
To help him get to where he needs to go.
To help him to get to where he needs to go.
Which is where?
Sorry?
Which is where?
Well, wherever the escapee guy is. He's got a farm, hasn't he?
He's not got a farm.
He did. He went and bought a farm, didn't he?
No, he didn't buy a farm.
Okay, what was he doing?
He went to Mexico.
Mexico, that's right. Yeah, Mexico.
And he got a boat.
He got a boat. That's right. So anyway,
so what's the closing scene?
The closing scene.
Yeah. You haven't seen it to the end, have you?
Yeah. Yes. The guy turns up. The escapee turns up, doesn't he?
Where?
At the tree.
At the tree.
Yeah, doesn't he?
What?
Doesn't he?
What, do you mean Morgan Flickcroft?
No. Morgan Freeman gets there, finds the letter, and just as he's about to plan his route to Mexico, the escapee guy, the escaped doctor, turns up.
No.
Doesn't he?
Incorrect.
I thought he did.
No.
Well, how do they meet then?
Well, Morgan Freeman then gets a bus and goes to Mexico and finds him in Mexico.
I'll tell you what.
Scene is he's walking down the beach and he sees his friend painting his boat.
Oh, I see.
And then it all fades off into a beautiful kind of, they're together in this idyllic, beautiful, gorgeous place.
Is there
and their life is complete.
Is there no extradition treaty with Mexico?
Well, I don't think you have to worry about that.
Well, you do, because if they followed him, they know where the escaped prisoner is.
Yeah, but all he's done, but they're never going to bring him back from Mexico.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. But anyway, the point's going to say, by the way, that's a long Greyhound bus.
Anyway, what's happened to the tree?
Hang on, it's a long Greyhound bus journey from Ohio, which is North America, to Mexico, which is deep South America.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyway, the point of the story is...
What's happened to the tree?
The film came out in 1994, and ever since, the tree where the letter was secreted became a site of pilgrimage for literally tens of thousands of fans over the years.
Right.
Anyway, guess what happened yesterday?
What happened?
It was an oak tree, and it was blown down in a gale. Sorry, why do you think that? Yeah,
it's tragic, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
it is. It went over.
So that's it then?
That's it, yeah. So now
I've just seen a picture of it. Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, there's big calls now to raise money to try and right the tree.
Apparently it's been rotten since 2011.
It has, yeah.
A bit like you.
Well, you've been rotten since you were born, the day you were born. There's no decent fibre in your body.
No need to be rude.
Now then...
Do you remember what Tim Robbins' character was called?
Let me see. Oh,
the
Andy
escapee.
Dufresne.
You're now reading the story, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
Andy
well, you're reading it.
It's Andy Dufresne.
Yeah, well, it's spelled Dufresne. Right. So anyway, what happens is Morgan Freeman, he gets out there and he unearths this letter from his friend Andy Dufresne, a jailmate.
Yes.
And then he goes off to Mexico and he wants Red to join him there. Okay.
Yeah. Where does he go in Mexico?
Probably somewhere like Acapulco, I'd imagine. If he's
begins with a Z.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know Mexico very well, do I?
Have you not been to Mexico?
Yeah, I have, yeah. Been to Acapulco.
Have you?
Yes.
That's why you think he went there?
Yeah, that's what I thought. He might have gone. Anyway, the point of the story is...
Going loco down in Acapulco.
That's it. The note says...
Yeah, what does the note say?
Well, the note is to Red. It says, remember, Red, hope is a good thing.
Flitcroft.
Yeah, hang on. Remember, Red, hope is a good thing.
Yeah.
And no good thing ever dies.
That's true.
No good thing ever dies?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
No good thing does ever die, no.
Anyway, so as a result...
the tree's died, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. As a result of this tree going over, the guy who is the spokesman for the Mansfield and Richard County Tourism, which created the Shawshank Trail, so people can go up there and see this tree, said it's tragic. People say they want to do something beautiful with it, so they're going to actually have a sort of ceremony for the tree because the tree's now dead.
Maybe they could sort of wait until it gets petrified or something, and they could, put it in a glass case somehow.
The thing is, somebody might make a lot of money out of this because the Tourism Bureau does not own
the time, by the way.
Yeah, hang on a second. This is very important. The Tourism Bureau does not own the land on which the tree stood and cannot say what will happen to it. No. But Ms. Snavely, that's a lady, by the way, not a man. Yeah, I said Jodie. It's Jodie Snavely, yeah. Remains optimistic for the tour. She said, I think fans are still going to come to this iconic site because it is part of movie folklore history.
It's like the Joshua Tree, isn't it?
The Joshua Tree.
Because the Joshua Tree...
That was in the California desert, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's in Death Valley. But the Joshua Tree now is no longer actually standing up. So people don't go and see it. It's fallen down.
The picture of the one that was on front of the album.
Yeah.
That's gone, is it?
Yeah, it's not there anymore. But people still go to where it is. But there's just a kind of, a few sticks.
Yeah, but is there a plaque which says the Joshua Tree...
No, it's a desert.
...of the U2 album?
Where are you going to put a plaque?
You put a plaque in the ground.
What, in the ground, in the sand?
Well, I was driving through the Atacama Desert in Chile once, right? And I came across
any plaques?
Yeah, I did.
Planks?
No, there's a plaque there.
Plaque for what?
A British priest had gone there to help a load of Chilean people and died of thirst in the desert. He got lost.
Right.
Sorry, why do you think that's funny?
Why is there a plaque for him then?
Well, I don't know, because he was a local hero, because he tried to help people.
So it's just in the ground?
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's bolted onto a rock, There's, you know what a rock is.
I do know what a rock is, yeah.
And
fascinating.
They have honestly bolted this plaque onto this rock and says, Father... I don't know, call him whatever you want, Father...
Call him whatever you want, because he's a local hero.
That's right, yeah.
It's great that you remember everybody's name.
Yeah. Father Bert Smith passed this way and helped all these people.
Oh, the Flitcroft.
Could be Flitcroft, yeah.
This is Talk Sport.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
Right, now then, we are the two mics, and we're in for Colin Murray on TalkSport with Wix. Let me tell you, half price on selected tiling and flooring with an extra 15% across the range when you buy online. And this wonderful offer ends on August the 2nd.
Certainly does. Now, there's quite a bit of Twitter action after your amazing review of that Shawshank Redemption scenario.
Yeah.
Most people pointing out that, in fact, it was, as I suggested, a rock hammer, not a spoon that he used to dig out the wall. And also, he was not a doctor, as you claim. Of course, he was a banker.
Yes.
And so
he was, actually.
We've got loads, we've got so many tweets saying this that I'm not sure I can give you all credit, but thank you for sending them in.
Yeah, the doctor, right, was in fact in The Fugitive. Do you remember?
The Fugitive?
Yeah, do you remember...
was that Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford, yeah, but years and years ago, when I was a kid, there was actually a TV series called The Fugitive with David Jansen, believe it or not. Yeah. Or Jason. It was
David
one of those
Jason.
Two. David Jason,
No, it wasn't David Jason.
Well, there was a guy called either... No, there was. He was called either David Jansen or David Jason.
No, David Jason was in Only Fools and Horses. He was not the
Fugitive.
There
was a guy of a very similar name years and years ago. I think it was in the 60s. Used to watch it with my mum and dad. Used to watch it with my mum and dad, and the guy was accused of killing his own wife. He was a doctor, and he ran off. Because he wasn't guilty.
Mexico.
What happened was he was in a train being transported to the penitentiary after being found guilty of murdering his wife.
Right.
The train came off the tracks and the train rolled down the side and there was a great train crash. He managed to get out and he escaped and then the rest of the series was all about him keeping, one pace ahead of the authorities who were chasing him.
Right.
Yeah.
Lucky he was not David Jason.
Well, absolutely.
Now, this is a really interesting question from Eddie in Derby, who's actually sent this in on a text, 81089. After Tim Robbins escaped from his cell, how did he manage to rehang the Raquel Welch poster from the other side?
On the hole in the wall?
Yeah.
Very good question.
Yeah.
He must have had an accomplice.
Well, he couldn't have had. There's nobody in the cell.
No, it's one-man cells. By the way, that must be a horrible way to spend your life, in a cell with bars only on the front.
Yeah.
No privacy.
No window.
No window. Well, no, I think there's a window at the back.
Yeah, a tiny window.
A tiny window at the back, but just bars at the front. I mean, have you ever done the trip of?
I thought you were going to say, have you ever done time?
No, in San Francisco
the
Bay.
answer to that is no.
Have you ever done Alcatraz?
No.
No, neither have I.
No.
But I've seen pictures. Don't worry, but I've seen.
Well, I've been to plenty of penitentiaries.
Yeah, well, exactly, I have as well. And but the Alcatraz.
I was once introduced to the chair. As this guy, I had to go down to the Mississippi State Penitentiary.
Yeah.
And it was actually, I think it was a federal penitentiary. Because it was some boot camp where they were teaching young kids, young offenders, how to become responsible.
Yes.
Right? And I went to see the governor of the prison.
Yes.
And he was a very odd guy, like most of these people are.
Yeah, they are,
And he was like, would you like to see the chair?
Oh,
and I went, okay then.
Yeah, why not?
So he took me into this room where the electric chair was.
Yeah.
And it was
Old
hideous.
Sparky.
Yeah, hideous looking thing.
Yeah,
really kind of, medieval looking.
Yeah.
And then he kind of gave me this kind of sardonic grin and went, you want to sit in it? And I went, no, not really.
No.
Why would I want to sit in it?
Yeah.
He said, I'll take your picture. Sitting in the chair. I'm like, no, I really don't want to sit in an electric chair.
I would have done that.
Really?
Well, how many people have sat in an electric chair and actually got out of it again? No, I mean, seriously.
Really?
How many people have?
Well, I can't imagine
I tell you what I find extremely weird is the gurney. And they put the people on the gurney.
Oh, when they inject them.
Yeah, that's the bed with two arms that they put their arms on, right? And then they inject you. And they have to have witnesses, and you can volunteer to be a witness to the death of a man from injection.
Yeah, I know.
Why would anybody want to witness that?
Well, because they need
Why would you want to witness that?
Well, because people like to do jury service and that kind of thing.
Yeah, by the way, I've been called for jury service.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, who in their right mind would want you in a jury?
I don't know, but I've been called.
Well, tell them to have a listen to the Shawshank Redemption conversation, and I'm sure you'll be excused.
Yeah, I'll send them the tape.
Now,
I've got a grip on the legal system.
Now, you might have heard the breaking news, by the way, from Pete Abbott earlier on. Have you seen this story from the FA? They want to introduce a fourth substitute.
That's mad.
Into the quarter-finals, semi-finals and final of the FA Cup.
I think that's mad, honestly.
Why?
Well, when football started that I was watching in this country, there were no substitutes, and if a man broke his leg and he was taken off, you were down to 10 men. No substitutes.
When?
Pre-1965,
Really?
I think the first one was 65, wasn't it? So I'll tell you where it manifested itself, and I think one of the reasons why it changed in the 1965 Cup final, Liverpool versus Leeds.
Right.
Liverpool won 2-1, but I think it was Chris Lawler, the fullback. It might have been Jerry Byrne.
Chris Lawler for Liverpool.
Chris Lawler and Jerry Byrne were the Liverpool fullbacks.
Yeah.
One of them.
It wasn't Alec Lindsay with Chris Lawler.
No, that was later.
Okay.
Alex Lindsay did play at Liverpool. That was later. But in the 60s, it was Chris Lawler and Jerry Byrne.
Yeah.
One of them, and I think it's Jerry Byrne on reflection, broke his collarbone early on in the game, but played throughout the match. And the reason being is that when a man went off in the 1965 games, there was no substitute.
Really?
No.
That's weird, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And
what would be the point of having a fourth substitute?
I don't know. I mean,
and why would they want to do it? I mean, apparently the World Football Law-Making Body, which is always a bit weird to me, is this IFAB, right?
Yeah.
Apparently they're carrying out a global study to see whether this would work. And so if they approve this, this will start in this actual season.
Yeah.
Why do they have to approve it?
Well, hang on. In which competition do they have 5 substitutes? Is that European competition?
No, I don't think so.
No, you can have...
What, like European Champions League, you mean?
Or is it internationals? You have the whole squad sit on the bench, and you can have 5 substitutions.
Isn't that just in international friendlies or something?
No, I don't think so. And you can. Is it international friendlies?
I think it must be international.
I'll get
friendlies.
that clarified.
Yeah,
we should know these things. But anyway, I think 4 substitutes is making a mockery of the game. I honestly do.
I mean, I can see where they could say, let's have a 4th substitute possibility if, for example, the goalkeeper gets injured.
Yes, I can see that.
And then you can still keep your other 3.
Yeah.
But, I mean, without having to have that kind of specification, I think 4's mad, isn't it?
I think 4 is mad as well. Because...
And also, why just for the quarterfinals on? If you're going to do it, why wouldn't you do it for the whole competition?
Well, this may be well linked to the somebody's been floating the idea again this week. I think it's David Gill, who is the kind of, I think he's been acting chairman of the FA prior to Mr. Clark taking over as chairman.
He's one of the three, isn't he?
He's one of the three, yeah. But I think he actually floated the idea this week that eventually going to have to get rid of all replays, right, in the FA Cup.
Yes.
Now, that caused a terrible row amongst the smaller clubs for obvious reasons. If you get drawn against Manchester United at Old Trafford and you get a replay, wow, you know, you're in the money. Or if you get Manchester United at your ground, your little ground with 3,000 people, what's your problem?
Sorry? Very funny tweet.
Oh, really?
From Jim Shelley.
What's it say?
I used to work with, actually. It says, very well-known series, only fugitives and horses.
That's funny, do you?
Starring David Jason and
well,
David
I'm telling
Jansen.
you, I'm going to find this guy's name in the next time.
David Jansen, you're right.
Right, Jansen, there you go.
But it wasn't David Jason.
Well, it's very close, isn't it, you oaf?
Well,
you know?
I mean, you could say that about almost
from
anybody's
30 or
name.
40 years ago, you know? Anyway, if you would like to talk about more serious
anyway,
subject,
sorry, you carry on.
So Yeovil get, Manchester United down at their place, 3,000, 4,000 ground.
Right.
They get a replay, they get a draw, they get a replay, go back to Manchester United, 60,000.
Yeah.
The way the money... more, 72,000. The way the money's divided up in FA Cup ties is 1/3 to each team and 1/3 to the FA. So that means they get, what's 1/3 of 72?
Oh, so that's why they like the idea.
26.
Yeah, well,
right?
It is, yeah. So that's why they like the idea of having so many games. Then.
Yeah, it's not actually, it's 24, I've just realised. Yeah, exactly. So they get 24,000 times the average of, what's a ticket at average £50, okay? Because you get very expensive tickets, cheaper tickets. 24,000, £50, what's that?
Well, it's a £250,000, it's about £500,000, isn't it?
Well, it's more, isn't it? 24,000 at 10 would be 240,000. Multiply that by 5, £1.5 million.
£1.5 million.
Keep going for the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the
I can't
compromise.
remember what the point is now.
Well, it's about this fourth substitute. So the compromise was, why don't we rub out replays just from the quarterfinals onwards? Because usually the quarterfinals are the bigger clubs that don't need the money as badly. So it seems here that might be a compromise situation to say we'll introduce a fourth substitute from the quarterfinal onwards.
I don't see how that works in any way. We're out of time anyway. You've been rambling on for such a long time about it. You've completely confused everybody. This is Talk Sport with the two mics.
On digital radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The two mics on Talk Sport.
Night and morning, I drink warnings Advocaat.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, and you're listening to the two mics. We're in for Colin Murray all week. Porky Vision coming up in this hour. It is, of course, the best TV review you'll have ever heard anywhere.
Absolutely.
Where Porky tells you what he's been watching, and if it's anything like the Shawshank Redemption, I'm sure we're in for a treat. Coming up very, very shortly, we're going to be talking to the chief science editor of the Times newspaper, the Thunderer, who's going to be telling us all about how drug cheats are now trying to change their DNA to actually get around some of the doping laws that we've now got in place.
It's absolutely astonishing. You hear all the time, don't you, that the cheaters are always one step ahead of the testers, and this is an incredible example of that very thing.
Sounds like sort of Frankenstein medicine, doesn't it? I mean, you change your DNA, you turn into the Hulk, don't you? I don't think that's a very good idea.
You turn into anything, I should imagine.
Exactly right.
Turn into a frog.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. You're listening to Two Mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on, of course, so do look out for that. This extraordinary story was in the Times this morning. Scientists fear Olympic cheats will beat drug tests by gene doping, because, of course, we've heard about blood spinning, the stuff that Lance Armstrong used to get up to on the Tour de France.
This is replacing the whole of your blood.
Where they take the blood out and basically put it back in so that, you know, whatever tainted drugs you'd been using...
I think a member of the Rolling Stones used to do that for different reasons.
Well, I think Keith Richards certainly got a complete blood transfusion, did he, in Switzerland or something. I think Ronnie Wood may have done the same thing. But let's talk to Tom Whipple, the author of this said story, to find out from him precisely how this would work. Tom, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the show.
Afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all.
Thanks, Tom.
Now, this is an extraordinary development, it seems to me. Gene therapy, of course, is something that that is being sort of used and explored all the time for medical problems and for hopes that that maybe, you know, some diseases that people are born with or perhaps have a risk of getting because of the hereditary thing is you know, gene therapy in that area is not unusual. But to change your DNA in order to win a medal at the Olympics just seems an extraordinary thing to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's not surprising. You know, every medical advance has also found its way to translate into some way to cheat in sports. And the sports authorities have been aware of this. And the idea is, you know, blood doping is something we know about. You use something, typically EPO, to boosts the capacity of your blood to transport oxygen, and that can be checked for. But these things like EPO are also naturally produced by your body. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you could boost your DNA so that you make more of it. You insert a virus that snips a bit out of the DNA in your cells and insert something that makes them work better at making EPO, and it's undetectable because it's your body making it. So it's something that they're worried about, that the sports authorities think is the next logical step. At the moment, you wouldn't probably be able to do it without the backing of some serious laboratories or, a country. But then with what we've seen over the past 6 months, that's not as implausible as you might think. But
well, funny enough, Tom, that's the part of your story I was going to ask you about next. I mean, what you're hinting there is that this is state-sponsored cheating again, isn't it?
Well, if it's happening, they don't know because they've only just got a viable test to actually see if it is happening, then at the moment it would be happening in a state-sponsored fashion. But the issue is, I mean, I write about science, and every day we get news stories. There's another one today about potential targets to gene therapy. It's a very exciting medical treatment, and so more and more clinics are getting able to do this, and the more clinics that are able to do it, the greater the likelihood that this is something that can be done illicitly and cheaply. But at the moment, you'd be talking serious research groups, so they just don't know whether there are athletes who are doing this. But certainly by the next Olympics, you'll find that more and more clinics are able to do this, and then it might well be a serious issue. Sure.
What is this process designed for originally, Tom? Is it to help, for instance, with Down syndrome conditions, blindness, all this kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, the potential is huge. The things that are being looked into at the moment are things like certain genetic blindness, where you'd get adults who got this, and you'd inject things into their retina, which would correct faulty genes. But it's anything where faulty genes are involved in an illness. The idea is that you can get these viruses that'll go and snip out the bad genes and put in the good genes, to put it simply. And obviously, just as there'd be very good reasons why for things like EPO, you might want to do this for people who've got bad hearts or who need to boost their red blood cells. And obviously, you wouldn't want to do this for perfectly healthy athletes. But
that's the thing. I mean, would there be? I mean, if there was to be, athletes using this particular technique, I mean, does it have any sort of long-term side effects, as it were?
Well, I mean, the honest truth is we don't know. I mean, we're just seeing stuff coming through for steroids now because people have been doing that since the 80s, and it might be it's completely fine for some things, but then the issue is one of morality for the competition rather than necessarily their health. But it's not a good thing to go about altering your DNA just to run faster.
No, I totally agree. And Tom, we know from experience, going back 30, 40, maybe even further number of years, that states who get into this, state-sponsored cheating, has absolutely no consideration for the long-term health of the people they're making do these things, or the people they're experimenting on.
No, of course. I mean, you see the athletes from the GGR, the sort of track and field athletes who, I think one of them, she ended up changing her sex in the end because she'd been on so many hormones. And yes, absolutely, this is a very exciting medical advance that will be used for people who are ill, and who are prepared to take on potential future side effects because of that. Yeah. But you don't know what's going on with athletes. No. And the scientists at the moment say, look, this is still a hard thing to do, and we think it's unlikely that we'll pick people up, but they just don't know.
But does it mean they're going to have to spend vast resources now, the authorities, on once again trying to catch up with the cheaters?
Of course. I mean, it's a very, very hard test to do. They don't think it'll be able to be done in Rio. They'll probably have to send all of their blood to laboratories in Australia.
Right.
And so, they're always one step ahead. But they've been working on this test for 10 years. I mean, they saw it on the horizon and were well aware that this was coming. And it might not be that this test, can't catch everything just now, but in 4, 8, 12 years' time, they'll start reviewing, as they have done from the Beijing Olympics and found a lot more cheats from that. They'll start reviewing stored blood samples and see it popping up.
Sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Tom, thank you very much indeed,
Tom,
for taking the time to talk to us. That's the science editor of The Times, the top people's paper, as you like to call it.
That's right, yeah.
Or the Thunderer, as you sometimes call it.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, some of the stories coming in from Rio at the moment are not exactly filling you with
one about the sludge
joy.
in the sailing...
health experts in Brazil, according to a piece I read yesterday in the New York Times, funnily enough, basically saying that anyone who's going to get involved in the water sports area, like the marathon swimmers, the sailors, the windsurfers, basically they're being told, keep your mouth closed. If you go into the water.
Well, I mean...
Because it's literally like sludge.
It's horrendous.
It's just horrendous, isn't it?
It's horrendous. And I'm also told, and this is in some previous reports I read, that, this is not just a question of an upset stomach. You remember when David Walliams swam the length of the Thames for charity?
And he was very ill afterwards.
He's very ill. He took water in. He had, sort of belly, derry-berry stomach, or whatever it's called.
Derry-berry?
Yeah, what's it called?
You mean Delhi Belly?
Delhi Belly, that's it, and all that kind of stuff. And, and various other things. But here, I read a report saying that the sort of things you could pick up here are E. coli, hepatitis B.
Well, they've got various they call rotaviruses, right, which can cause all sorts of horrendous stomach problems.
Some of the worst diseases in the world you can pick up are loitering in this sludge pit, which they're trying to pass off in Brazil as a boating lake.
And they're saying that tests that the government have actually done are showing what they've described as a veritable Petri dish of pathogens.
A Petri dish?
So, like one of those little, scientific, sort of
Yeah, I know you mean, like a glass
dishes.
thing that you put this stuff on.
And you put the stuff on, and super bacteria that actually could cause death.
The sort of stuff that you put under the slide of a periscope.
Yeah, microscope. Not a periscope.
Not a periscope. That'd be on a submarine.
Although we're going to finally talk about submarines in a little while, aren't we?
Yeah.
But that'll be later. But, I mean, it's just incredible that they could even consider holding the events there.
It is.
When they're literally, they're not just putting people's kind of, bodily systems under terrible pressure, but, I mean, it could cause death. I mean, if anyone, they say, with a weakened immune system could actually get so ill that they would die.
I've got to give you a bit of credit here. You actually first got onto this quite a few months ago, didn't you?
I did with Tim Vickery, our man in Brazil.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he was warning us that you want to see the state of this water,
and there's nothing they can do now because they're just going to have to use it. It's absolutely incredible, absolutely dreadful stuff. Anyway, we've got lots more to do, of course, coming up. We've got Porky Vision to do. We've got to talk about submarines as well, and I've got a couple more questions for you about Everton that you have failed to answer so far.
What?
Everton. We haven't answered the questions about Everton so far. Have you forgotten? What do you mean? Well, never mind. I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
This is TalkSport. That music can mean only one thing. It is time, of course, for our weekly look at what's going on television. And it's Porky Vision.
It is.
So Mr. Parry has been selflessly spending time staring into the old goggle box to see what has been on. So what have you been watching this week?
Well, let me tell you, there's 3 programmes I'm going to concentrate on, OK?
Yeah, all right.
The Secret Agent, which was utterly brilliant. The second...
You know what? I watched a bit of that at the weekend. I thought it was awful.
Well, the second
one...
Terrible. Did you see the first one?
I've seen the first one,
the first one?
I just didn't like it.
Have you seen the second one?
Not yet, no.
Right, OK.
I don't think I'm going to.
So I'm going to tell you about the second one, OK?
Yeah, all right.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about Coronation Street, a particular part of a very small part of one episode, which relates to a lot of people's lives. But first of all, I'm going to kick off on the documentary, or so-called documentary, of Keith Richard, which I saw on BBC Two last Friday night at 9 o'clock. It was appalling.
And this is the thing about his youth in Dartford. Right?
How often do you get the chance to sit down with Keith Richard for a couple of hours and ask him about his life?
Yes.
Not very often.
Not very often.
Because the man
and
is
that was kind of how it was sold, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The man is all over the world. He's a mega rock star. He's got many interests in life. When is he in London? When is he going to sit down? When has he got an hour to speak to you, or 2 hours? Because a documentary like the one I saw would have taken, I reckon, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours of footage, which you compressed down into what he did.
Probably spent about 4 or 5 months doing it, because it was directed by Julian Temple, I think, wasn't it?
Julian Temple?
Yeah, it was that kind of very arty sort of film director.
That's him, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I was just about to say that. Now, the point of the story is this, that I couldn't understand why they made it or what it was about. Keith Richard is sitting there literally looking like Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, upon whom apparently Johnny Depp based the character on Keith Richard.
Correct.
So there's all this kind of, lips and, he's clutching a cigarette in his hand and he sort of curls his sort of bent fingers around the cigarette and puts it in and out of his mouth and he chuckles a lot, almost to himself, really, relaying these stories. But the problem was, that it was all about him growing up in Dartford. He was born in 1943.
Yeah.
But he was going on about how much he remembers of the war.
Right.
Now, he said, for instance, that when he became...
And you do struggle to think that in terms of what he remembers in any event, from anything,
exactly,
through his life, it must be a bit of a struggle.
I don't think he remembers falling out of the tree in Australia or anything like that, because, that was fairly recently. But anyway, the point of the story is... I had a look afterwards and to find out when the Luftwaffe bombing campaign ended against London, the East End, the Blitz. That was in 1943 when he was born.
Right.
After that, the German Air Force had been smashed to bits, and Germany was falling apart.
I must admit, I did watch
the
it as
D-Day
well.
invasion was a year later, so there wasn't a lot of bombing going on.
Well, also, I don't remember anything from when I was 2. Do you?
Well, I don't either. So he's born in 43. Well, he's only 1 in 43 to 44 when the last bombs dropped. But anyway, he said years later, whenever I walked down a hotel corridor when we were on tour, if there was another hotel door open and somebody was watching a war film and I heard the sirens go off,
That doesn't sound too much like a siren.
I thought it sounded great like a siren. He'd say that the shiver would go up the back of his neck and his hair would stand on end.
Right.
And I'm thinking... How come?
Why
if he was 1,
yeah, exactly.
he wouldn't have realised what the siren was about, even if he could hear it.
Unless it was some kind of Pavlovian response.
Exactly. So then they interject all this Path newsreel footage of kids dancing in the streets, of people in dance halls post-war, of people celebrating in Trafalgar Square, VE Day and all that.
So there's no footage of him as a child?
No footage whatsoever. There's one picture, one still picture of him as a child, and he looked a bit like the young Keith Richard. Well, he was the young Keith Richard.
Well, in fact, that's not a coincidence, is it?
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, it was all completely irrelevant rubbish because he was only 1.
Yeah.
He was only 1.5 or 2 when VE Day happened.
But presumably he went all the way up through his youth, did it?
Well, hang on. Let me tell you, this is the amazing thing. So in the whole of an hour, it was, I was in the choir at school when I was 6, and he's sucking on this cigarette, you know what I mean? Like, nice, isn't it? And then
I heard the bit about when he was talking about how he beat up the bully. And then he was cool. And I listened to it and I thought, I don't believe that story. It's like one of your stories.
Well, no, my story's all true. I became a protector for the other kids. If we have a kid, I became a protector. I look after them. I saw him cigarette. And all this kind of stuff. Anyway, this long, boring, rambling, sort of non-information. It was real non-information stuff. And the only shot you're getting of Keith Richard, right, is sitting there, face to camera. I don't even know what he was sitting on. Didn't show the chair. Got a sort of like a towel wrapped around his head. A sort of the bandana type thing he wears, but it's a very large bandana. And there was no attempt to take him to Dartford to point out that, well, actually, that's where we live, but that got bombed by Hitler.
Oh, so he wasn't even walking around the streets?
He wasn't walking around the streets. He wasn't in Dartford. He was in a closed room, and he was looking straight into camera, relating this story. And I watched this and I kept thinking, I'm going to turn over. This is boring, but it's got to get better, And this is boring. I'm going to turn over. It's got to get better. It never did.
Yeah.
And then
did you watch it all the way to the end?
Well, this is the point. I thought, I wonder how long this is scheduled for, because I could see it was going up to 1 hour on the clock.
Yeah.
So I thought it must be an hour and a half at least, because we haven't got anywhere yet. And then he said, you know what? He says, when I was 10, of course, when I was 10, I met Mick. He says, and then he said, completely contradictory, who I've known since he was 4. and then the credits rolled
just
up.
A bit mixed up.
No. And then the credits rolled up, and that was the end.
Bizarre.
That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
So you're saying it's not worth revisiting this on the old iPlayer?
Not under any circumstances. I mean, I'd rather stick my head in the oven for an hour. Honestly,
really?
It was just. I just could not see the point of the whole thing.
No.
It was. It's good a job you pointed out. It was made by some sort of arty type director guy, because it must have been, Keith Richards from another angle or something, you know what I mean?
But it was very highly trailed. And I think a lot of people would have watched it and gone, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Or Keith Richard in a daydream or something like that, or whatever. But no great... I wanted to hear about him and Mick Jagger when they were at their worst, or their best, or whatever you want to say, I
think the truth of the matter is he had quite a normal kind of middle-class upbringing.
He had normal middle-class upbringing. They showed pictures of prefab houses being built in Dartford after the Germans had bombed a lot of the houses and all that. But it was rubbish. And what an opportunity to lose, to have Keith Richard for all that time.
Yeah.
And you know, why on earth couldn't he have told us about the girlfriends that he and Mick Jagger shared?
Yeah.
Because they did. It's legendary. It's not a secret.
Marianne
Faithfull and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And for some unknown reason, he didn't want to talk about anything, or they didn't want him to talk about anything, except when he was 6.
Yeah.
And very odd. Anyway,
very strange.
That's by the by. Now, the second one, the
you haven't got a lot of time now.
The secret agent was brilliant.
See, I didn't like it.
Because what happened is, this guy's a hopeless secret agent, and he's a double agent for both the Russians and Scotland Yard Special Branch, OK?
Yeah.
And the Scotland Yard Special Branch Chief Inspector who's onto him is a Scouser, but that's not explained. Why, in 1901, this guy from Liverpool is a Chief Inspector in the Special Branch in London is not explained.
Right.
And there was no mobility of labour in those days. There really wasn't. You're born in Liverpool, you became a policeman in Liverpool. So that's not explained. But anyway, point of the story is, he's recruited by the Russians to blow up the Greenwich Royal Observatory building. And on the way up there, he takes the simple son of his partner in life, OK?
Yes.
And she is a decent and good-looking woman who's been taken in by him because they've got a flat above the old curiosity shop he runs.
Right.
So she's quite happy about that, particularly as she's got a brother who's a simpleton.
Yeah.
And that's not being unkind. The guy, but
Not a word you hear very often.
Well, basically a kid with an intelligence factor lower than his age or something like that.
Right.
So he's a handful, but he takes him as a cover to go and see a guy who he thinks will help him down in Kent. But when he gets down in Kent...
I found it all very confusing.
Well, you're absolutely right. The guy down in Kent said, I'm not going to help you. I'm trying to lead a new life, a straight life. This guy was a convicted terrorist, Irish terrorist, because the Irish problem was very big at the time.
Okay.
But he'd renounced his sins, and he'd been taken on by a wealthy family as, you know, as a show of unity with Ireland. You see what I mean?
Right.
So then he goes straight to the Greenwich Royal Observatory himself to blow it up. And as they're walking up the hill, the excitable...
secret agent.
No, the excitable brother of the secret agent's partner. You know...
I don't want to call him that.
No, I don't want to call him that.
That's what they called him.
No, the unfortunate,
okay.
right. He grabs the bag that the bomb's in, which he's picked up from the professor who's made the bomb for him, and he runs up the hill towards Greenwich Royal Observatory. He trips, he falls on it, and it blows up.
Really?
And blows him up.
So he's dead now?
Oh, he's not just dead. They showed you a later scene in the programme where the
Not just dead?
Oh, no. The secret agent... In those days, you could do this. You could actually visit the morgue and see dead bodies by paying the mortuary attendant. You know, it's like a spectator sport.
Oh, yeah.
So the secret agent goes down there in the middle of the night, right? And he says to him, I want to see this body. And the guy says, you don't want to see it. It's not even a body.
Right.
I want to see it. You really want to see it? And they show it you. And it's a calcified remains of a body.
Oh.
And it's all black.
I don't know why they have to do that in these shows.
Do you remember those terrible pictures from the road to Basra when they blew up those tanks and the skulls had turned to black?
Yeah.
That's what you see.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it was shocking.
Yeah, I bet.
But he can't now tell his partner in life, I've blown your brother up.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't supposed to,
So
obviously.
He didn't know that he had a bomb?
No, didn't know he had a bomb or anything, you know.
Blimey.
And the last thing I was going to tell you about Coronation
hurry
Street
up, though.
is that Nick Tilsley threw a man out of his flat who was a surveyor who was valuing the flat because the man wouldn't stop whistling.
Right.
Yes, full on. I can't stand whistlers.
Yeah.
If anybody came into my house and started whistling, I'd shove a bag of sugar in their mouth to shut them up.
That was Porky Vision. There will be one again, of course, the same time next week. We are the two mics in for Colin Murray on TalkSport with Wicks Karcher K4 pressure washer. Save £50. It was $189.99. Now it's just $139.99. We can announce the Wicks winner of the Wicks phone-in, can we not?
We certainly can.
Because we're going to send a £100 Wicks gift card to the lucky winner of the best caller of the day.
We certainly are.
Chosen by you. Who have you chosen?
It's going to Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan, who I call Brian.
That's right.
But that wasn't my fault because
Ryan.
you didn't enunciate his name properly,
Exactly,
right?
so it's my fault.
So it's your fault. But anyway, Ryan, also known as Brian, but you are Ryan, from the New Forest, Southampton fan. Congratulations, 100 smackaroonies coming your way.
Yeah, well done.
From Wicks, of course.
Of course. Now, a couple of things to mention to you. On your Porky Vision impression of Keith Richard,
yes.
A couple of people are saying this. Gabriel says this. Was Porky watching a show on Keith Richard or Blakey from On the Buses?
Yeah, that's right.
Kojak says Porky doing a great impression of Derek Geiler doing an impression of Keith Richards.
Yeah. Well, it was hard to tell, to be honest, because, you know, Keith, you know, oh, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, we're all very fine.
Now, a couple of people have also tweeted me. I'm just trying to find the tweets, but I can't find them.
Okay, what do they say?
Suggesting that you should go on that new show that's coming out very soon. It's the sort of naked dating show.
What?
Have you seen it? It's been in all the papers. It's basically
I can't read it.
It's
repulsive filth.
It's not repulsive filth. This is the latest thing, right, where people basically choose their dating partner based upon how they look naked.
But the insinuation is that a woman will choose a man for his physical attributes, and a man will choose a woman for her physical attributes.
Exactly.
That, to me, is animalistic. I want nothing to do with that.
How is that in any way unusual?
It's unusual because people don't act like that. Human beings don't act like that. Animals might act like that. Human beings sit down and talk and explore each other's minds and get to know personalities and you know, the resonance of a person. I think it's repulsive. I think it's absolutely repulsive.
Well, going along with that...
In fact, I think it should be banned.
One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is a study that's been done this morning with a load of people aged over 60.
Over 60?
Where they found that 7 out of 10 of them were basically content with their lives overall, which I guess you would say you are, right? However, they fear being widowed actually less than they fear a lack of sex.
What?
Yeah.
Ooh,
so apparently, if you're over 60, you fear not having sex. A third of the unhappy group said that basically a shortage of savings was their biggest concern.
Yes.
But the quarter of the same group pointed out lack of sex was the main reason for their unhappiness.
Do we have to talk about this?
Well, this is why you're
sex
so grumpy.
amongst pensioners. I mean, is that really a topical subject for us?
Well,
I don't think it is.
There's a lot more pensioners around now than there used to be.
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Listen, I'll tell you what I do want to talk to you about. You haven't told me this, right? So you're hiding this away. You walked out of the tube station with somebody this morning, and quite an interesting incident happened.
Right.
Now, would you like to tell the millions of listeners?
As I was walking out of the tube station, as I was coming to work, and it was raining slightly, it was a bit drizzle, so I wasn't really sort of paying attention to my surroundings. I was sort of head down walking. I suddenly heard this female voice going, "Hi, Mike!" And I looked around as I thought it must be somebody that I know.
From the office, maybe?
From the office. Or
it's quite
somebody
near the office?
Yeah, it's quite near the office. Somebody that I'd met before, something like that. Anyway, I saw out the corner of my eye a police van. And there was a police van just waiting at the traffic lights.
Right.
And there was a female police officer leaning out of the window, waving at me.
Of the passenger seat, was this?
Of the passenger seat, waving at me. And the guy who was driving, who was also a police officer, of course, was kind of smiling and not quite waving, but they were sort of looking in my direction.
Right.
So I just went, "Oh, hello." I mean, I don't know how they recognised me. I don't know.
You haven't been stopped for speeding or anything like that, recently, have you?
Well, I suddenly thought, I don't think I've been in the police custody recently.
So,
I just don't know.
Are we suggesting that these uniformed police officers were, in fact, TalkSport listeners?
They probably are TalkSport
who were
listeners.
expressing their appreciation to you for your contribution to broadcasting.
I think that's exactly what it was about.
That's remarkable.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely remarkable. But anyway, good to hear. Nice to hear that the boys in blue are fans of ours.
Well, we are big fans of theirs.
It's always placed.
We are big fans of theirs. Now, what I also need to say is that we have released the Watch of the Day slightly later than advertised.
Yes, sorry about that.
It's a particularly hideous one you put out today. It's called a red herring.
That's right.
And it appears to have come from Debenhams because on the back of it, I put out a picture of the front of it and the back of it.
Yes.
Where it's got stainless steel case back, Japan movement, Debenhams.com.
Yeah.
Red herring, hideous watch.
Well, it's green.
Do you want to know what some people are saying about it?
No.
Mike says, that is horrific. TMU says, sold on a street corner, quality watch this, pal. I saw Porky coming and sold him a red herring.
No, not at all. It's a quality watch. And do you know, I had that watch a few years ago. Do you know why?
Why?
Well, it's got a green face, hasn't it? It was my green look.
Why did you want a green watch?
I had a green jacket.
I thought everything you had was blue.
No, well, most of the time it is blue. But what happened was, it was summer, and I wanted to go and buy like a linen cotton sort of...
what, blazer?
Blazer, that's right, that sort of thing.
Seersucker scenario.
Don't know what a seersucker is.
Do you know what seersucker is?
No,
seersucker is that kind of crinkly cotton.
Oh, that sort of stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely
normally
right.
Normally you see, it's a sort of head lead style.
That's right. Absolutely.
Blue and white stripes or something.
Absolutely right. But the only
you
colour...
want a green one?
Yeah, the only colour I could get, and I got it in Debenhams. No, it wasn't green. It was like khaki.
Khaki.
Right? That's green, isn't it?
Well, no, it's more beige, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. Well, this was more green then. No. It was more green. It was a bit like Dactari. Daktari. Yeah. But it was a greenish...
Nobody remembers that show.
Greenish sort of Daktari.
Unless you're as old as you are.
And anyway, believe it or not...
cross-eyed line.
Believe it or not, as I was trying it on, I thought, it's like... yeah, that's right, yeah. Cross-eyed line. Trying it on, and I said, oh, this is great and all that kind of stuff. My eyes fell upon, in the same department, a load of watches.
Yeah.
And they were called Red Herring.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, what are they? They said, well, a new range of watches.
This is like their own brand.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, they had a tie-up with them, I assume. So...
how much did you pay for this watch?
I think it was about £169.
No.
So
really?
Yeah.
That's hideous.
So. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, how about this one from Mark? Who says it's a fair watch, that, Porky, was the candy floss free. Andy says, I'm starting to think he just buys them from a charity shop before each show.
No, I don't, honestly.
It's possibly the worst one. Villa Rich says he couldn't have actually bought that. We've hit a new low.
No, I did. And the thing was, the face of the watch is green. It matched my jacket. So I never wore it unless I wore my jacket. Yeah. I mean, doesn't everybody have matching watches for each jacket that they have?
No. I mean, we must be getting quite near the end of your collection now, aren't we?
Well, there's how many days to go? 2. Yeah, so there's one tomorrow, and then the piece de résistance.
Yeah, the Rolex.
Friday. Yes.
Pete says, I'm sure I was offered one very similar on a beach in Malaga 2 months ago.
Well, you may have been, mate, but I can assure you, Mike got mine in Debenhams.
Yes.
It actually says so on the case.
You were talking about submariners earlier, weren't you?
I'll tell you
the whole
what.
thing about submarines.
You know, of course, that I was down at the coast at the weekend, and of course I have friends down there who...
What do you mean, the Commodore?
Well, no, the Commodore is a civilian, but I
thought he was a ex-naval man.
He is ex. But I mean, it's another location around the back of the harbour I use, where some retired naval submariners, including those from naval intelligence, gather. And guess what I found out?
And what did you find out?
What I found out is that kids now growing up who want a military career will do anything except get in a submarine.
Yeah.
So obviously,
there's only 4 left anyway, isn't there?
No, they're just the nuclear submarines. We've got a fleet of another 20, which are submarines.
What, you mean not nuclear powered? So what are they powered by? Diesel?
No. Some of them are nuclear powered, but they do not carry nuclear weapons.
No, I get that.
The 4 Tridents carry nuclear weapons.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so they are nuclear submarines.
Yes, they are nuclear submarines.
Not armed with nuclear weapons.
No, they're not. They're armed with torpedoes and that sort of stuff, right?
Okay.
So anyway, so I said, what's the problem? He said, the one thing that kids growing up through from the age of 12 onwards can't handle is non-communication with the outside world because they have...
What, you mean like sort of social media and all that?
Absolutely. Facebook, the fact that they've got Twitter, they've got all these different... Snapchat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time...
Pokemon Go.
And a lot of the time, of course, this is a great complaint of parents, maybe even you spot it with your 2 young boys, they've got headphones on and they're completely detached from the rest of the world. They're just concentrating on their machine. Now, the point is, in a submarine, if you're 3,000 feet down or something like that, you can't get any of that. You can't access it. If you could access that, the Russians could access where the submarine is.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
And so...
Well, we've got a follower
mate.
of the show, a big fan of ours, who's in the Navy, and he talks about wanting to come to one of the live shows. He's never been able to do it because he's been sometimes off on long trips abroad to mysterious places.
Yeah.
But he's on Facebook an awful lot, and he puts his location down, and he now works for NATO, right?
Yeah, okay.
And I often think to myself, well, you sure should be putting this on Facebook, where this particular NATO building is and where that NATO building is. It's quite weird.
Anyway, the conclusion of this story is they can get recruits for naval ships, surface vessels. They cannot get recruits from submarines because youngsters will simply not be cut off from the outside world.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're away for 6 weeks and you spend most of that time underwater, no touch with it. So we're going to have manless submarines in the future. Drones that you see now, which are operated from Virginia and all that kind of stuff, soon the submarines will be manless. They'll be operated from the Admiralty in London.
Really? How extraordinary is that?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, what have you got to say for yourself?
Sorry?
Have you got anything to say for
yourself?
yourself?
Have I got anything to say for myself?
You haven't, have you?
What should I have to say?
Well, never mind. We'll come back to that.
Absolutely.
On DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM. Talk Sport.